But anyway, yeah, I wanted to, I wanted to, I don't know, I kind of want to just nerd out on vert stuff and talk to you about like the old English vert scene. And
that's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't know, like it's just like something like, maybe when I was just like younger, I was always drawn to it, like because you guys had there was such a strong scene there when I was younger.
We really did have a rich scene. I mean, back in the late 80s, when I first got into BMX and first got into freestyle, I was very, very lucky with the influences around me. There was just such a broad field of talent, just crazy
in such
crazy
a small
talent.
area too.
It's such a tiny country, you know, we're a tiny rock in the North Atlantic there.
Yeah,
you know, and there was so many incredible riders and young riders, like 13-year-olds who were crazy, pros who were really good. You know, so many. Yeah.
So what year? Like, okay, what part of England did you grow up in? What year did you start riding and everything?
I guess my story really briefly, I was born in Liverpool in the northwest and grew up just to the north of that in a town called Southport in Lancashire, so the northwest of England. For my 9th birthday, I rode a bike around the neighbourhood a little bit, and I kind of wanted to be a stuntman when I was a kid.
Yeah,
you know? So I was a
like
boy,
the Evel Knievel stuff.
Yeah, I was a boy, like a piece of wood and a couple of bricks, making ramps and all of that with my friends in the neighbourhood. And then I saw a bike that was actually designed for it, a BMX bike at the local bike shop. I begged my parents, and they did like a combined birthday and Christmas gift.
That's the ultimate.
That's the ultimate. and still to this day, I remember, like, I drove to the shop with my mum in her car, and then I rode my bike home and raced her home.
What bike was it?
It was called a Rally Burner.
Oh yeah.
Which was like the big 80s craze.
And that was a bike a lot of
bike.
English dudes grew up as their first bike.
Yeah, and it was, honestly, it was like 80 or 90 pounds, which would be like $130 tops, you know, but which I guess is kind of a lot of money for a kid.
Expect one in the 80s
for back
too.
Then, yeah. But it was definitely low end, entry level.
Yeah, but it was enough to get the spark going.
It was the best thing, and I mean, I can still really clearly remember riding that bike home, and you know that was the moment my life changed. So I'll just ride around the neighbourhood, and a friend at school told me he used to go to a racetrack.
Yeah.
So I went to a racetrack with him, and that changed everything. Best thing I'd ever seen. So I started racing. And then after about a year or so going to the racetrack, they built a quarter pipe at the racetrack.
Yeah.
And there was a pro who rode for Talker over in England back in the day, and then for GT, called Andy Irwin, and he lived in our town. He was from Southport. And he used to ride there a little bit, so I started riding a little bit and seeing this guy Andy.
Was he a fair amount older than you?
Yeah. He's closer to 20 at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm 10 years old at the time, but he was kind of cool with me too. He was tolerant of me, and he talked to me a little bit, and I'm still friends with that guy to this day.
Oh, nice.
And he, so I learnt to do airs, and I remember on that little quarter pipe, it was maybe like 7 feet tall.
Was it one of the ones that they had just a 2x4 trannies on the side?
No. It was curved. It was a perfect transition, but I always remember it wasn't sheeted in plywood. It was strips of wood horizontally.
Oh,
across.
really?
So when you would go up, it was like.
Yeah, it was just like just cuts.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool. And it was wide as well. I remember it was 10 or 12 feet wide.
Oh, that's crazy.
It was kind of a big deal.
For like early 80s and stuff.
Yeah, and it was built on the dirt. So there was like a little dirt run into it.
Yeah.
And then you'd hit this quarter. And then so I learnt to air, and I could get like a couple of inches over, you know, out the top of the ramp. And I remember one day, I remember the thing with racing was, I was a mischievous little kid, so I'd get in trouble at home, I'd get in trouble at school a little bit. Nothing serious, but just, you know, messing around, just being a boy. And I remember one time in a race getting told off by one of the officials for jumping in the race and like doing X-ups or something.
The strict race dads or something.
I was showboating, and they kind of lectured me that I was losing time and I was endangering the other kids and all that. And this made me really sad because, you know, I'd get told off everywhere else. I didn't want my bike ride. But at the weekend, that was my thing. And so I always remember that was a big deal to me. I kind of shied away from racing after that. I didn't like the rules and the structure. And then one day, I remember I missed my moto because I was riding the quarter pipe. That was it. You know, that
Were you still riding the Rally Burner then?
I was still on the Rally Burner, absolutely. I remember I cut the handlebars down really, really skinny. It had V-bars, and I was all about X-ups. That was like my first. I could do little tabletop X-ups, and I think I could do one-handed jumps.
Did you race expert and stuff? Did you make it that far?
No. Like maybe and these were local races as well, just in the northwest. Not even like the region, just in the town, basically. I think I went to like a race in the next city, and I was like, okay, the city of Liverpool, the county it's in, is called Merseyside, and I was Merseyside racing champion when I was 10 for the 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it was maybe novices. I don't know if it was even expert. I was terrible at racing.
Yeah.
I'd like, if I got in the lead, I'd look over my shoulder and get caught up. I just wasn't a good BMX racer. But anyway, so then it was quarter pipes, and you know, a friend told me there was like a freestyle club in Liverpool, like at this leisure centre, like one day. The sports, like at the sports hall, like one day on Saturdays maybe.
Yeah.
So we'd go to that once a week.
What year was that about?
This would be 84 maybe.
Okay.
19. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, people having quarter pipes. I mean, that's still like a pretty new. That was a new thing in the States at that time.
It was pretty new, but here's how lucky we were. I had one at my house, and my friend Marcus had one at his house, and then we had a third friend who had a just in our little neighbourhood, all riding distance. No, like 6 feet tall. Okay. So we had a couple of ramps. So it was, we're going to ride at your house today. We're going to ride at my house.
Yeah.
You know, so we were very lucky in that respect. And so yeah, about 84 or so. Then I was going to this freestyle club, and they had a competition, so I entered that, and then they had a trip to like a regional race, and then I got in the federation over there. Our equivalent of the AFA was called the UK BFA, the United Kingdom Bicycle Freestyle Association. So they took me to a regional for the north of England, and I entered novice. So I think I was 12 years old.
Was it a fairly...
No, tell a lie. I was 12 years old my first year, and I did the whole series for that year. And I think I did well enough in the regional series that I qualified to turn expert the following year.
Yeah.
So I was so then when I was 13, I rode the 13 experts. Maybe the 12 experts. And the year after I started going to the national series.
Yeah.
Then, so 1987, I rode the national series, and I qualified. I think I was like number 2 in the country in the 13-year-olds.
Who was your competition?
There was a guy, an amazing rider called David Frame, who to this day...
Oh, yeah, no, I know David.
This is how hard it was for me coming up. I rode against David Frame and another guy called Mick Hudson.
Yeah, and those are two kind of English legend dudes.
Two of the most talented riders to this day that I've ever met.
Now...
So honestly, I used to get third a lot.
David kind of went on to be like a street guy, didn't he? A little,
like a bit more of a park guy.
Okay.
He could do anything though. He was an incredible
I've seen stuff.
rider.
Yeah.
I mean, the pictures of him from the late '80s, they kind of stand their ground.
There's a bunch.
That's good. And he rode some like big cement pools and stuff.
That's where I've seen.
Livingston Skate Park in Scotland.
Okay.
Was he lived right there.
And that's the park that's still there, right?
That's still there. Yeah. Legendary park. So he just rode there every day, and he still rides now.
Nice.
I saw him recently. I stay in touch with him. He's a really good friend. So So all of a sudden I'm riding nationals, and then we went to the World Championships. I got third at the World Championships that year.
Was that up north, or was it down London? Or?
That was in England that year, and it was actually a week-long tour in lots of different cities from the south to the north. I remember that. It was like they'd put everybody on buses and go to the next city the next day for the next round. It was incredible.
That doesn't even seem like something... Like, if that happened nowadays, it just seemed like it'd be like the craziest thing.
Yeah, this is, I think, what happens when parents run things. You know, it was this big extravaganza.
Yeah.
And had a big soda company sponsorship and stuff. So that was crazy. So by the age of 13, in my life, in my mind, I've arrived. I'm getting to ride with pros. Yeah. I'm getting to ride all these events.
You're fully enveloped in everything.
I've started riding half pipes a lot.
Yeah.
I am now not really riding flatland contests anymore.
It was just ramps.
You're able to ride ramps or flat, so I've already become like the ramp rider.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's when I really started to meet all the people who were my heroes from the magazines, like Lee Reynolds, Carlo Griggs, Scott Carroll. I mean, all these guys influenced me so much.
Yeah.
Mike Canning, an incredible rider.
Yeah.
I never really... I came a little bit after... Like, Craig Campbell was kind of in America by this point.
That would have been like 87?
87, yeah.
Yeah, because he was riding for...
Skyway, I think.
Well, what was the company in England?
ProLite.
ProLite, and then he did, I think he did... an upland, he
came to a pipeline.
He came to a pipe.
I think that was 86.
Yeah, and I heard when you went to those pipeline contests, if you weren't a pipeline dude,
couldn't ride it.
It was just really hard. And I remember, I think I've seen a few photos of him actually airing it. You know,
I think he placed good, and he beat legit pros of the day.
The only people I hear that weren't locals that would do good was like Hugo, and then him when he came. You know,
Craig was an incredible rider.
Oh,
Craig,
yeah,
I've always really liked. He just had a great style and just an element of originality.
When I was younger and I'd see stuff of him, it wasn't that even he had a great... Because you'd see his style. His bikes always look cool.
Yeah.
But when you looked at him, you were just like, I just want to hang out with that dude. Like, you were just like, he's probably doing the cool... He just looked so cool. Like, everything.
It seemed like like the world was nice to the world wanted Craig. You know, it's like all the doors open
Yeah.
very easily, like in the freestyle world over here, and sponsorship and magazines.
I sweated him so.
It was so good.
I sweat him so hard to just see him like cruise around, just even in pedal. Like I've watched old footage, him just cruise around his bike. You're like, that just looks nice.
I rode with him when I was 13 in 1987. We went street riding, and I did like a little wall ride from the flat. You know, like no bank.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember he was like, "Wow, that was really cool." He complimented me. It's the best thing that happened to me that year. Craig Campbell complimented me.
No, I'm sure.
On my street chops.
So, yeah, you're starting to ride with those guys. So, tell me if I'm wrong. So you're up north, and wasn't there kind of like down south? There was like kind of two vert crews, kind of like.
Yeah, we were all kind of. There was lots of different people in different ramps and different places. There was a crew in London which was like Lee Reynolds and Greg Guillot and Andy Brown.
And that was where they'd ride under the bridge,
under
right?
That bridge at Meanwhile Gardens, that area is called in London. Apparently, if you ride past under that bridge now, the height pole markers are still on the wall. You can see them.
Greg Guillot probably put some of those up there, I bet.
Legend has it, yeah, absolutely. And I'd see pictures from that spot, and those guys, and they never rode with helmets or anything. They were just incredible. And like Lee Reynolds and Greg, I always credit them, and Andy Brown, I credit them with being nice to a weird little kid from the north. Because from the age of about 13, like I had their phone numbers, and they would ride with me, and they would answer the phone to me. They were so cool to me. I remember Greg gave me one of his old helmets.
Yeah.
He gave me this old Dino helmet he had, and they just really took me under their wing.
Stuff can change.
So good.
That stuff can change a little dude's life. Like
they changed my life for sure.
I mean, there was dudes when I'd come up. You know, once because I grew up in a little town, and once I left that town, and I met a few people, and they were like, "This dude's nice to me." Like, one of the things that meant the most to me, and it was a little later on. We were riding Merino Valley one morning. Brian Castillo rolls up. You know, I'm like 19. And Brian's like pretty much the same age as me. He just chatted up, and I'm like, "This is that dude, that street rider dude." And he like gave me his phone number. He's like, "Give me a call if you guys want to ride street tomorrow." I was too scared to call, but it like, you know, I was just like blown away. Like it meant so much. Like I was just like, "This is awesome," you know. But yeah, so there's that crew. Sorry, I totally sideswiped.
That's okay. And then you know there was a big crew that I grew up with, in the middle, like kind of in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
There was a crew, Jason Ellis, the Hudson brothers.
Yep.
There was 4 brothers, James, John, Mick, and Chris. Now, Chris was the youngest, who was a skateboarder, and the other 3 were vert riders.
Okay.
And they had a half pipe at their house. So every like school holiday, I would take the train and go and stay with them.
Yeah.
And like Lee Reynolds was good friends with them, so I got really more connected with Lee through them as well. And then this guy Jason Ellis that lived in like the next village from them, became like this incredible vert rider in the 80s.
I remember his name.
Great style. So these were my friends now. You know, they kind of like took me in into their circle.
Yeah.
And so we were just, you know, we were connected by our mutual love of not just BMX but the vert ramp.
Yeah.
And we all, you know, being kind of a small country with great transport infrastructure, you know, we could take the trains all over the place, go and ride with each other, stay with each other.
Yeah, just crazy how many from like kind of like your age and maybe just a little older, how many dudes like influence vert riding. Like, you know,
I mean, I never really think of it that way because from our perspective, we were on the other side of the Atlantic looking at freestyle and BMX Plus and everything, in awe of Josh White and Mike Dominguez and Brian Blyther, you know, later on Matt Hoffman and all of that. And we were like nobody from nowhere as far as we felt. You know, like freestyle was
totally get it. Yeah.
We were on the wrong side of the world.
Even living in Oregon, when I grew up, I felt, you know, I could have felt like I was that far away.
Yeah.
And then when my friends and I came up, people would be like, "Oh, you know, Northwest style and stuff."
We really, I feel like that made us try really, really
hard.
Yeah,
because
really
you're seeing stuff in a magazine, and in your head, it's like 10 notches higher than it actually is. So you're trying 10 times harder because you want to get to their level. But when you meet people, they're like, "What are you guys, you know, what's the stuff you guys are doing?"
And I think we had a very healthy scene. Like, you know, there were a lot of very, very good riders.
Yeah.
And we just, I mean, I just saw that was the standard. And my attitude in life has always been, I wanted to jump into the deepest pool with the biggest sharks as soon as possible, because I knew that being around these people, you know, I wanted to surround myself with greatness in the hope that I could improve.
Yeah.
I wasn't like I wanted to be, like, I always talk about, there's this one guy in my town that I grew up, right? He was my best friend growing up when I first started riding BMX. And like at least once a week he would remind me that he was the best rider in our town. Just, you do know that I'm the best, and I'm the best. And always, and then when we started going to the nationals, I think that first year when I went to started going to the national series, I was like top 3 in the country, and he was like 33.
Oh,
because he was
wow.
a year older than me, and he was against Carlo Griggs and people like that.
Oh, well, you have no chance then.
And that's when his riding stopped. Like it just ended there. He got a car and got a girlfriend and moved on with his life.
That's what keeps people riding is it's that hunger, that chase, you know,
he wanted to be the big fish in a small pond, and I wanted to be I was happy to be a small fish in the big pond.
Yeah. No, yeah.
I was just about the journey.
And I think if you talk to most dudes that go far riding, it's just that hunger to, you're just always looking up or forward to get to that next level.
And it was never straightforward ambition, to be honest. It was just the thing I liked, and I just wanted to do it more and more and more. And I could see all these great riders around me and all these great places. And I was like, maybe one day I'll get to go to California.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get to meet Brian Blyther and Ron Wilkerson and those guys.
Well, you're probably friends with Lee when he headed over to California.
I was, yeah. That I knew him before.
Was that crazy? Like, you're like, whoa, this dude.
Yeah, that was surreal for me, because the Lee that came back, he went, like, I loved his riding before he left, but by the time he got back, he became pretty much one of my all-time favourite riders.
Well, his style is just...
There's one picture at the horror offices of Lee doing a Can-Can.
Is it the Flint, Michigan contest?
It's the Flint, Michigan contest.
Yeah.
And it's one of the greatest BMX images of all time. Where his foot's half on, his foot's like...
It's just like the
leaning
corner
off the
of his...
Yeah.
Dude, first off, I could talk about that damn Flint, Michigan contest for like an hour, because I think it's like one of the greatest vert contests ever. It was like right at that time where it was going from just like... Dudes were really just starting to really push it super hard. You watch Matt when he was like an AM, he's going like 11 feet out of that ramp. Lee's there doing crazy shit. Like,
Lee tried and that got really close on the 900.
He got close on a 900. I think he washed out.
Yeah, no one had pulled a 900 yet. There was that mad race to try and...
It was totally the chase to be the... Yeah. I think somebody else...
Just to make it possible, just...
I mean, he's trying it on tough wheels.
I saw him try one once in the late 80s where he recoiled pre-coiled so hard to take off on the 900. The tough flexed, and like it washed out on him, and he just like burst out the top of the ramp, and like him and his bike went separate ways, and he crashed. Just the force of going in with that spin, the tough wheel couldn't take it.
Isn't there footage? I think it's him, the Austin, Texas vert contest where they had it on the board, and the ramp would shake. I think if you watch it, he tries a 900 and the ramp shakes and pushes him.
Oh God, I've seen that.
And he like lands in the middle of the ramp.
In the middle of the flat. Yeah.
Because I posted up that contest and I was watching the footage, and you fully are seeing the ramp shake, and he goes to spin a 9, and it chucks him like he lands like 6 feet.
I'm not sure that anybody's ever discussed that out in the open. There's only so many people that have ever really tried 900s on a vert ramp. But I'm not sure that anybody knows how hard it is to land a 900 smoothly on a vert ramp. It was the most difficult thing for me. I from the get-go, when I first started trying them, the spin was easy because I could already do 720 jumps. It wasn't hard to get to 900 degrees, but to land on the same transition that you'd taken off on was impossible. Because
you want to pull,
all
right?
That force, you just pull away and you naturally head to the flat bottom. Yeah. And if you don't and you counter that, then you just spin and land on top of the ramp. You hang up.
Yeah.
It was just, that was the hardest bit for me, was harnessing it to land in some semblance of control so you could actually ride away. Like the spin itself was never difficult.
You watch some of that old footage when it's the chase, like people talked about, Dominguez had already pulled one on his backyard ramp, which it's Mike. He probably did because he's crazy.
That's one I will never confirm nor deny, and I've talked to Mike about it a little bit. And like I've quietly probed him on that one, and I kind of don't want to know, and I'll let that one be because you're right, because I know Mike quite well. Mike probably did. Yeah,
and you watch the one he did at the '87 finals at the Enchanted ramp.
Yeah.
I mean, he came really...
And that's the thing, it's not like it's a stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
Everyone pretty much that you saw him try was plausible, it was close.
Yeah, I think one, he put his foot down and then just fell over.
Right.
At an AFA contest.
He essentially rolled away from them. It was right there.
Yeah, but you watch some of the other people try him at the time, like, Lee, Chris Potts, Wilkerson... Maybe John.
I remember seeing
people spin.
Blyther tried one and he jumped off at 540. I remember seeing Dave Mirra try one years later.
Oh, really?
He did the exact same thing that Brian did.
I think Ron got one and I think landed like 720. And
I think Volker tried them as well.
Volker did try them. Yeah. Volker pulled one though. When I talked to Dave, he pulled one at a show.
On the GT quarter pipe or something.
No, it was like I think a demo he was doing for GT in like. I can't remember. I remember talking.
No, I'm confusing it because I remember Miron pulled one on one of those quarter pipes.
No, Miron would pull him because when he was young, when he moved from Thunder Bay over up to us, he pulled him he had tough wheels and a Trickstar before he went to the 2 hip contest. We had these NAFA contest, and we had a 16-foot wide quarter pipe, and he did a 900 on that at a local contest.
Oh my God.
With tough wheels in one of those like black magic looking trick stars, like you know, and people were like lost their damn mind. Like this is like a little local Northwest contest, but some of the dudes' spins were just insane on those things, you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Anyway, I think going back to like the whole UK scene back then, there was such a healthy, flourishing scene, and then like Lee had come to America. I'd watched Craig do the same thing.
Yeah.
And for us, that was the end goal, like. To not just get good enough in our country, but, you know, we went to some events in Europe and all of that. There were some, you know, badass guys in France and Germany. But the idea that you could actually make it to America and get a US sponsorship and make it. And these guys like Lee and Craig, like, blazed the trail. And they demonstrated it was possible. And then they brought attention to us. I remember Freestyling had some features about the UK. About the scene that we had and all the crazy
I remember seeing that
stuff.
It seemed like you guys had the most crazy things to ride.
We had really, really good skate parks left over from the 70s. We had really good half pipes everywhere. I mean, looking back, we had a great scene, and it was in a small bubble, and it was kind of small and accessible. Yeah, and we all knew each other. Yeah, it just, I mean, I would look at it and I would just think it just seemed like the best. Like I'm like they have to. Well, in the 80s too, other than Pipeline, the parks were all gone. You'd see you guys riding like cement parks, and you're like, what is this? This is this is crazy, you know? Like, dudes are just roasting, like, I don't know which park this one was, like Devil's Toilet with the big extension. Satan's Toilet. South Sea.
Yeah, it just looked like the scariest shit.
That's
dudes.
Not to this day, that bowl is still there. That pool that's gnarly.
Dennis Wingham owns it, right?
Oh, God, Dennis Wingham, yeah.
Yeah, I always see that. I'm like, I need to go over there and just do a tour and just hit some of these old parks because...
You'd love it.
Oh, it seems amazing. So when was the point kind of where you were just going from like, you know, you're in that scene, some of your buddies come out. When was the point where maybe did you start drawing attention there? Because I think the first time I saw you, I think you were on Hoffman.
Okay.
You were like, maybe it was like I saw you in like an old 70s vid or something, you know. But when did it start going where you're like, maybe I think for me,
1990, I was 16, and in England you graduate high school at 16. Okay. And then, so I remember I turned pro in 16, and this was through the UK BFA. You had to qualify in the amateurs, and you had to be 16. You weren't allowed to turn pro any younger than that. So January 1st, 1990, I signed up. I renewed my license and applied to be. You'd ride the master class for 1 year, and then we're allowed. It was like a B pro, and then once you'd done a year, you could stay there, or you could go like A pro, as it were. So I went in there to do my time, stepped up. So I went from the amateur classes, and that was the first time I wrote Jamie Turn the same day. He came from, I think, the 16 or the 17-year-old
Jamie kind of lived away from everybody, didn't he?
Jamie lived close to the Hudsons that I was talking about, kind of in the Midlands of England. He lived, and Jason Ellis, he was kind of in like a couple of towns across from them. But I mean, so I turned masterclass, and that was my first competition. And then I know I'd snuck into two jams the year before. I went to a race at a freestyle contest in Holland, so I'd ridden pro at that one already in 89 when I was 15. And then I rode another one where I just signed up in A group at the South Sea Skate Park. And nobody said I couldn't, so I rode A group. So that was great. So I was desperate to try and be a pro. And then I had sponsors by this time. I had like a Converse shoe deal.
Oh, right.
I was sponsored, but I was on remember Invert magazine? I
told you,
the Invert team.
Yeah.
Which meant like they had like 5 different sponsors or whatever. So I was getting full flow on everything. And then when I was 16, then they kind of put me on a retainer, and I started making a little bit of money and everything, and doing shows and making a day rate. And that was when I started to see. I remember 1990 when Matt came over to one of the contests there, and it was like the UK BFA went into decline, and so I just started riding full pro at everything. Because, I mean, everything was the kind federation, of still dying. We were like, we're going to start doing things ourselves. The parents got bored, we got a bit older. Yeah. So the organisation, it changed a little bit, and so a lot of the structure disappeared. And so that year I started riding just full pro in all the contests. And I remember Matt came over to do a demo, Matt Hoffman, and I spent the week with him before that, riding with him. And I remember it'd been like a really good year for me, and I turned pro, and I was sponsored, and I was in the magazines all the time and everything, making a little bit of money. And I rode with Matt for a week and was just like, God, I'm nothing. Look at this guy's like a force. And I'd seen Matt ride before a few years earlier, but just riding a backyard half pipe with him, I was
pump was
I was
crazy.
embarrassed to ride with him. It was pathetic, like how much better than us he was. And I was like, God, I thought like I was getting somewhere. I'm at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I remember it being a very good moment for me, and understanding that everything I do could be done 5 times better, and it was time to kind of like, I just needed to progress an awful lot. I wasn't nearly as good as I perhaps as 16-year-old me thought I was. You know, I thought I was starting to be quite good, and I was a pro, and I was nothing. I realised.
Did you have 540s at 16?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think I learned them when I was like 13. But inside the ramp, though, I remember the day I figured that trying to do them higher and higher.
Like we were talking about earlier.
Transition, yeah. And that day when I was like, I know what I have to do. I just have to blast one a couple of feet out the top of the ramp.
To get 3 feet out. And...
That was when I was 15. I remember that day, and I spent all day riding at the ramp and didn't do it. And then I let one fly, and I was so terrified. I remember I jumped off but kept hold of the handlebars and knee slid out next to the bike.
Yeah.
At 540, and I was like, oh my God, if I'd stayed on, I would have made that. So then I spent another half an hour riding at the ramp and not doing it, and I sent another one and I stayed on and rode away, and I could do 3 foot 540s.
Because when you get out, it's easier to push your nose in and keep yourself level from the loop out.
I think I had problems in years after. It was the hardest trick. I lost it for a while. It killed me. I remember one day losing them so badly that year when I was 15 that I actually sat next to the ramp and started crying.
I mean,
it was, and it wasn't the pain of all the crashes. I was just heartbroken
because you had something and it's
I had
gone.
something that was so great, and it just slipped through my fingers. I was like looping out and crashing. I couldn't even. I was getting so hurt, but that wasn't even the point. I was so heartbroken.
The loop out, yeah, especially at that age. Like I remember sitting and trying 5s over, and but they'd be at Cope. I could never get myself to go, but just beating myself up. But it was never getting the hurt. It was just like, just the frustration. I think just hurt more than anything. Like. At that age, you heal so fast.
Stuff like that's what makes. That's when people talk about character. That's how your character develops.
Yeah.
You look inside yourself and you keep going. You do it till you do it, or you don't. You walk away.
But you tried.
So by this time, I've ridden with Matt, and then that was when he famously did the first flare. I was on the ramp with him
at the
King of Vert contest.
The ones that had the invert.
Yeah, my dad made that ramp.
Where he rode off and gave the bike to a kid.
Yes. Yeah. So I did that demo with him. I rode the contest and I did the demo with Matt because we've been riding.
Was that the Riders' Cup?
No, that was a couple of years later. This was a UK King of Vert contest.
Okay, cool.
So we did. Like I rode his demo with him a little bit, and we planned out. That's the first time we did doubles. Like, so he aired over me, and then we did a 540 over 540, and I always remember because we were going to do 3. We were going to do air over air, then we were going to do air. He was going to air over me doing a 540, and then we were going to do a 5 over 5. Yeah. So after the second one, I was like, oh, okay, should we do the 5 over 5 now? He's like, no, I just did. And then, like, obviously, famously, I later saw the video, and like, he didn't even tell me, and that set the tone for my friendship with Matt. So many times over the years, we've done doubles, and he just flips the script on me midair. And,
doubles?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't tell you. I spun a 5 anyway. He just changed his mind, and we've done a lot of messed up stuff, man.
But doubles I've only done doubles once with Bristol, because you got to have a buddy you really trust with it.
Yeah, you have to, yeah.
And it's just weird, because I remember I was doing lip slides, because... I mean, we were just doing it that way, but I just remember seeing his pedal just wing by my eye, like, because, we were just like.
I mean, I've taken Matt out really good, doing doubles. We've had our ups and downs with them.
Yeah, that's not good. But yeah, so that contest, that's a super famous contest. Going like back to that, because that was first flare pulled.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the feel like? I mean, did it feel like BMX jumped like 10 notches higher?
Now the week leading up to it, because I'd stayed with Matt for that whole week and rode with him, I kind of quizzed him a little bit about this, because there was the rumor that he had some kind of gymnastics mechanism. We knew that he could do backflip fakies.
Yeah.
But
because there was the Bursey contest, right?
Yeah. So that already happened, but there was this rumor that he could spin 180 and land forwards on the backflip. Yeah. And we were all speculating, but nobody really knew for sure. So that week when I was riding with him, I actually said, "Hey, look, I heard that you can do like 180 backflips." We didn't know it was called a flare.
Yeah. Like
a backflip with like where you spin and you land forwards. And he just looked at me and didn't say anything. And I was like, the person told me that you have like this gymnastics harness, and he's like, oh yeah, because I have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on equipment. Don't be so ridiculous. So he didn't deny it, but he kind of like blew it off. And
Yeah,
I was like, oh no, you're right. That does sound ridiculous. And then like 2 days later, he did one. I was like, wow.
So did no one know he was going to do that?
Nobody.
So that just blew everybody's minds.
Mm-hmm. He did 2 flip fakies first and crashed. So our minds were blown. He'd done 900. He'd done everything that he could do. Okay, and he did these 2 flip fakies, and then it was like the second one. It's like he turned a little bit, and we're like, was that intentional? He landed at 90 degrees and crashed. And then the third one, he turned 180 degrees, and famously, that's the sequence that we've all seen.
Yeah,
Kevin Martin in the
jumping
background,
up and just smashing his knees
and all of that. And and he changed history forever. So that was kind of the scene then. And and just riding with Matt, I realised, like, I was nothing and I was nowhere and I was nobody, and that was the best thing for me, because I really kind of dug in again.
Yeah.
You know, and I really found like the progression in my vert riding again, and just started working harder and harder. I remember in '91 I pulled my first 900 at the Worlds in Denmark.
Okay.
And I think like
that's pretty early to be doing them.
Yeah, I think Matt and Dennis had both done them. Maybe somebody else.
I think they did. Dennis did his at that indie comp.
Yeah, in 1990.
And then
Dennis, Matt obviously from '89 started doing them. Was doing them. I think Miron could do them by then.
Yeah, Miron could, because he turned pro at that comp in '90, and he'd already done them before then.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know if anybody else had done.
But I always I know I was like the first guy outside of America.
Yeah.
But so I pulled my first one in '91. I actually pulled my second one in '98, 4 years later, and I didn't stop trying them. That one was just
that's crazy.
It was wild, and I pulled it, and then I killed myself.
How big was the ramp that you did your first one on?
Like 11 feet, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you think on those smaller ramps, it seems like scarier with less training to land.
A lot harder.
Yeah.
I mean, 11 is the smallest ramp I've done one on. I've pulled. I tried them on some 10s. I tried them on some 8-foot quarters. But I never pulled them.
So it's pretty crazy when Jay's done it on like a 9-foot quarter.
Absolutely. But Jay had a very, very clean technique on them as well. So his kind of it makes more sense for him. My technique was a bit different. I alley-oop.
I was gonna say, do you alley-oop? I was honestly just about to say that. It's like you kind of alley-oop a little on it, don't you?
And that's how I figured him out. Was that trip in 1990 when Matt came to stay in England? I asked him. I was like, "Hey Matt, look, I can't work it out. What's the difference between doing a 900 and crashing it, but like, what was the thing that changed the difference in you pulling it?" He's like, "Well, one of them you crash, and the other one you ride away." Like, all sarcastic, and he laughed. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. I was like, let me show you a video. And I showed him a video of me doing one where I landed at 900, and it was a lot like that one of Dominguez at the King of Vert finals. And my grip slipped off, and I just kind of like slid off and ended up just sat on the floor still with one foot on the pedal and one hand
where
on the
you're
grip.
Just like, really?
Like that close, okay? And he's like, oh, no. Oh, I see. He's like, you're serious. He went, you know what? You need to like just not carve so much. Just tighten up that spin. Yeah, he did his pretty straight up and down. Straight up and down. I was like, oh, okay, good call. So I tried a few more straight up and down, still didn't pull one. And then I was like, because I noticed that trying to go straight up and down, the force of the spin still made me carve a little bit. So I still had the same problem. So I thought, well, maybe if I alley-oop slightly, it will counteract the carve. And the first one I tried like that was the first one I pulled. Yeah, it's like almost like... I did like a 2-foot alley-oop into it, and then it's like I spun back onto my original line. I do that with turn downs. If I do a turn down air. Yeah. Like, exactly. I don't really because I can do an alley-oop turn down, and you know it's going to drop in easier. Yeah. But you just pretend in your head. You do a slight. Of course. And it pulls your body right, you know? It's almost like I see, like, if you imagine like a rectangle sticking out at the top of the ramp, that's the line you're going on, and you just head for the top right corner for me. Alley-oop that way, or if you turn the other way, you kind of like aim for that top corner, but then spin back down. That totally makes sense to me. Yeah. I was talking to Matt about that, and he's like, "Wow, you like really worked out a science about it, didn't you?" Well, from talking to you earlier, you worked out a science about a lot of this stuff. Yeah, and then so then by like 91, I remember 92, I sold my car to pay for a trip to the States to go to a BS contest. Which BS contest was it? It was the one in not Phoenix, just outside Thrasherland. Thrasherland, yeah. In 92. That was a good contest. That I got like a clip or two in Ride On from. Oh yeah, from that. Do you have like? Hold on, let me guess, because I'm a nerd out. Okay. You do? It's a nice pick or an ice grind or something? Nope. Fuck. You're riding a Condor, right? Nope. Okay, I'm done. This is pre-Hoffman bike. Okay. I was riding like a yellow Bash Guard Haro Sport. and I do a candy bar on that video, and I kind of get my heel caught, but make it.
Okay.
And I can't remember what else. I think I have 2 clips.
I know what, because I just watched Clowns Full of Hate, and you've got clips in that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In the little vert part, you got. I totally know the bike.
I don't know if I remember that. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, it was your first.
So that was my first contest in the States.
What place did you get?
I got 5th place behind Hoffman, Miron, McCoy, and Mira.
Was that Mira's first pro comp too?
It was Mira's first year riding pro.
Yeah.
And it was like my first year like riding pro in America kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he was newly on Hoffman bikes. A month after that trip, I was on Hoffman bikes. So that's kind of like where I began with Dave. We were like the same age. We were the kids on the Hoffman team.
Yeah.
The vert riders and mischievous little bastards, the pair of us. And
I'm sure.
And we kind of... I really liked Dave when I first met him. It just seemed like we hit it off immediately.
Yeah.
You know, we were in the same space in our lives kind of thing.
He was. I mean, you watch some of that footage of him when he was young. It's insane.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Like his part in Dorkin and York 4.5, I think he's riding.
Yeah.
Like, he's got so many combos and his pump. So, like, for how
he had this really determined pump, and the things I always give up when I lose my speed. I'm like, oh, I'm going to start again, kind of thing. I'm like disappointed in myself. But Dave, I noticed this recently. He refuses to accept that. He pumps harder and gets back to height. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He really had this,
which takes a lot of energy,
which is incredible, and he can trick his way back up to height, and I can do that, and I learnt it, but he just always did that, and I think that was one of the things that made him such a great contest rider.
It's
that relentless ability to just keep
especially doing tricks and getting your pumps. Yeah, definitely,
so good.
Yeah, it's so weird how much, like when you actually have a session with somebody, how much you can tell about that rider just from their pump. Mm-hmm. Like you can just tell what type of ramp they ride the most. Maybe what type of tricks they do just by kind of watching their pump, you know? There's dudes that ride way over the handlebars. There's dudes that let their bikes sink like crazy. For you know, it's so, yeah. I don't know.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, that's just, I always just notice that thing. Like when I watch people ride, you know, dudes will always have a different technique.
I'm with you. I very much read people's body language on the bike and study it, and
Yeah, so. Sure. So how, did you just stay in the States for a short time? I mean, I don't know.
That was like I came up for a month. I mean, I honestly, I sold my car. I came back and had like 0 to my name.
You just wanted to get over there and see where...
I want to go to America. So I was 18, I came to stay in San Diego for a month.
Yeah.
Went to that contest at Thrashland in Arizona. Just went to San Diego, fell in love with the place, was riding, you know, made lots of new friends and everything. Yeah. But then by the time I went back to England, I had no money left, kind of got a job for a while. Started riding for Hoffman bikes, which back then meant that I got free frame and forks and handlebars and two t-shirts and a seat post. You know?
But still, that was...
Which was badass back in the day. I was so happy, so flattered that Matt would honour me.
Oh, those bikes.
And you know, it was the best crew at the time. I was teammates with Dave Mira and Matt Hoffman and Jay Miron, you know, and the rest of them. I don't know how big that crew, but just those names right there.
It was insane.
Like, how could I have not been happy and flattered? And, you know, it was so great. But then... It seems like for the rest, almost the rest of the 90s, I remember Jamie Bestwick and we used to ride together here and there. We'd compete now and then, you know, but there wasn't much going on. BMX had all but died.
I mean, there'd be was it just like the Worlds in the 90s? And that
right,
was
there'd be like the Worlds, there'd be... And
that right.
There was... a couple of the people in the UK BFA kept it going, and they would have an event once or twice a year. Okay. So there was still some stuff going on. There would be the backyard jam started happening. So that was really the best event.
I guess the backyard jam
and honestly, I started dirt jumping a lot more because there was nothing going on with vert. So I'd ride vert, but I'd ride dirt jumps. I'd ride park contests. I think during the 1990s, at some point, I was like British dirt jumping champion. I was like British park champion.
Well, I was going to bring that. And you've kind of, you rode everything, kind of like, you know. I remember seeing like, I mean, you have footage of you were kind of riding everything in some of those old 70s videos and stuff, right?
Okay, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of thought of you, you know, until like, maybe
I mean, I was always a vert rider first and foremost. That's the thing I love and the thing that I am. But I've always been able to ride everything. Yeah. Like, I have a lot more flatland tricks than most people. You know, just so literally like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You know? It's just, there's the thing I like. I mean, these days, to give you an idea, like where I live in North County, San Diego, we have, I think, 7 vert ramps. And I rarely ride anything but a vert ramp anymore because I've spent my whole life trying to get here, and now that I'm here,
you're gonna take advantage of it.
I'm like, well, I could go and ride a skate park, or I could, but I'm just gonna go to one of the vert ramps.
Yeah,
because that's my thing, and I
well,
like
it's
it.
free. It's freestyle. Like if that's what you want to do.
But because to expend the same amount of energy of going to the skate park or going to the jumps or something, I could just go and have a really good vert session.
Do it.
And it's funny, and I spent years priding myself on riding everything, and honestly, these days I don't really.
Yeah,
I pretty much just ride vert. I mean, I'm sure I can, and if I ever wanna, every once in a while, I'll have a craving to go and ride a certain park or a certain thing, or go and ride some jumps or something, and I'll get it out of my system. Then I'm back to the vert ramp.
Yeah. So before like kind of, I guess we jump into like where the X Games starting.
Yeah.
I still want to kind of nerd out on some of that the British, some of those British riders that I think have got lost in the mix.
Sure.
Because BMX is actually kind of aging.
I did hear last month something about, there's talk about a British Hall of Fame, which I love. So it means these guys are finally going to get their recognition, and their contribution to the history.
You guys could probably pull that off better because you're a smaller country.
It'd be easier for sure. But no, just some insane riders that to this day I think of the things they did and how high they could air. I mean, I posted a picture of Carlo Griggs last week.
Yeah, the one that what's the dude's Instagram?
Disco Jimbo.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of old photos from back then.
Yeah.
What do you think? Okay, that photo of Carlos. What is he doing? 14 out of that ramp?
No, I don't know that it's 14. It's 12 feet plus, but the ramp's 8 feet. But it's the
is the ramp 8 feet tall?
Yeah, it's the casualness of the style. It's disproportionate.
And
to the
tough
size
wheels
of the ramp. On Skyway Tough Wheels with his sleeves rolled up. And then the next day, I remember on that.
How old was he?
He was 15 at the time. The next day, I remember there was a height pole on the other ramp, and he went and cleaned 13
out of an 8 foot, but out of an 8 foot ramp.
Yeah,
I mean.
And even my friend Scott Carroll, back in the day, Scott died in the mid 90s, but in the late 80s, early 90s, I was teammates with him on the invert team, and he kind of, when I turned pro, it was under his wing, and we were thick as thieves. We were like the best of friends. We were like the worst behaved people ever.
Yeah,
just mischief, and we were horrible, but just like in a silly, mischievous kind of a way, and Scott was just so incredible, so original. He had such an original take on things. And he, Mick Hudson and I remember we studied this picture we had of Scott once from, I think it was from 1988, riding this 8 foot wide quarter pipe. And like we measured it to scale. We measured the ramp and like we scientifically with a ruler, we measured the picture. And we were like, it's 14 feet something. And he didn't have the same style and panache that Carlo had, but I think he went higher.
That's insane.
And then Lee Reynolds, I saw him do a 13 foot in the, when still in the late 80s, like 89. I saw him go about 13 feet. And that's unfathomable. Now,
the ramps are
now you've got like Larry Edgar and maybe Morgan Wade, and you've run out of modern.
Yeah, Larry Edgar's got a wild pump, like how he goes high, like it's.
And Tommy Dugan as well.
Yeah, and
they have a different set of physics that apply to them. I know this from riding with Tommy Dugan and riding the same.
Do you feel like he approaches it like almost a dirt jump, but he airs?
No, he has bird bones. You know how birds have light bones, so they can stay in the air. That's Tommy Dugan's thing. No, Tommy Dugan has a very, very light touch, and he understands how to use the momentum.
Kind of like what we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Exactly.
Okay.
And harness it, and he's very, very,
kind
very,
of like
very
the
good
drop.
At it. Yeah. I rode this pool with him once, and I remember I hadn't ridden in a month. I'd had a broken foot it'd been broken for 9 months.
Yeah.
And then I'd crashed and broken my collarbone and had a surgery. It'd been the worst year of my life for injuries. And I'd taken a month off, and the first time back on a ramp was riding this pool with Tommy Dugan, and they had like a high air contest. It was at Pover's King of the Skate Park. Years back. And I was trying to ride that pool, and Tommy went like 3 feet higher than me, and I could not understand how and why. And then when I got a bit healthier, like my foot was back, I went back and rode that pool again. I went and rode it with Brian Blyther, and I talked to him about Tommy Dugan, how I just didn't understand the magic, and who better to ask than Brian, as far as studying and harnessing. And I remember that day I got to go like 11 or 12 feet out of this pool, like I figured it all out. And I think it helped that I was healthier and strong and stuff. But it was just really nice for me to see somebody, their approach to the terrain and how they were able to extract speed and flow.
Oh yeah.
And turn it into more. And I I mean, I think when I posted that picture of Carlo the other day, I said something to this extent that there's nothing that I like more and impresses me more in BMX than seeing someone go really high, but do it stylishly and land smooth. Like any other trick you can talk
That's
about,
how you go high.
You can keep it.
Yeah.
To me, that's the skill and that's the art, and that's my single favorite thing.
I mean,
and I'm not sure anyone could do it better than Carlo back in the day.
I mean, I just
Dominguez, you know, like Matt was incredible in his way, you know, remains incredible. There's all these incredible riders. Lee Reynolds, just this wild raw style, like and a good style, but an edge to it. Jerry Galley had an incredible.
We didn't even. Oh my god.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Jerry.
Oh my god.
But Carlo, the only person I've ever seen that had something similar was Mike Dominguez.
I could see that.
Almost a nonchalance.
Especially Mike, like when he's on Diamondback and you see that AFA footage of him.
Exactly that.
Just a rocket ship.
Only he and Carlo could do that.
That's so... You know? Yeah, it is
like Matt could do way more impressive things in different ways that were just insane. He was his own kind of insane.
But I see what you're saying.
But that special something that Mike D and Carlo could do, I still don't know anyone that can do that.
It is special.
That effortlessness to it.
The thing that almost is a shame is both of those dudes, for what you know, in BMX, if you're our age, those are still names that you hold up high.
Revere, yeah.
But they're almost like you have the least amount of footage of them.
And maybe that helps with the legends.
Honestly,
if they weren't overexposed, you know, like we. And
it seems like they were there for a minute, and then they pulled. It's not like they stopped really riding or anything. They just pulled back.
Well, I think that nonchalance in their riding also was in their characters, and they weren't trying to be famous, or they would like if they were still riding now, they wouldn't have their own YouTube channel, for example.
No,
they weren't.
It was just
attention hungriness. They were just very, very good riders.
It just seemed for them
their way on their terms.
Yeah,
and that just makes me respect them even more. You know.
Yeah,
it really, really does.
I agree with you.
But yeah, Jerry Galley, he had a different style again. Jerry could go very high, could look very, very good. But I think what a lot of people don't realise, I remember Jerry way back into the late 80s, before he really came to prominence and people understood like the extent of his influence and the importance of what he could do. He used to be... I don't want to use the word sketchy because he looked very good and he was very good, but he was very scary.
On edge?
He could go like 11 feet and land both wheels completely flat bottom and somehow get away with it, but then nosedive the next one.
Maybe a little Greg Guillot in there?
Yeah, he was the most exciting person to watch in that because you never knew what was going to happen. He was so raw, and then, you know, and so stylish later on, and like stylish from the beginning, but... Like it's like he used to be a bit loose, I think. Slightly reckless, and it was when he tamed his recklessness that's when he really honed like that beautiful style that we came to know.
Yeah, the first time I saw him ride, because I recognized the name, and we went to like Bristol. Me and one of my buddies went to Germany for a whole summer in '96, and we went to the Worlds.
Okay.
So we're riding the vert ramp, you know, we were just over there being fucking assholes running around the whole time. But I remember seeing Jerry Galley ride, and I was just like, John, like, I remember elbowing me. He's like, it's a British Broughton Blyther. You know, like, he was just like, and John, like, stopped and was like, watch his front wheel. Like, watch. Mm-hmm. He's like, he's catching, and he was going so high, no pads, no nothing.
No pads, no helmet, and just, and his trick choice was nice. This is something I don't know that people talk about this much. And, like, for me, trick choice became such an important thing because there were things I didn't necessarily like to do, but I felt like I had to do, like bar spins and flares and stuff like that. And then there were things that, like I spent years doing like Supermans and no-foot Kenkans until one day I was like, well, I don't enjoy doing them.
Yeah.
I don't think I do them very well. Matt Hoffman or Jamie Bestwick can do that. Why would I do that? Because really the tricks I want to be doing are, and I really realized, it really made me think about trick choice and just doing the things that I liked and playing to my own strengths rather than trying to be the guy, oh, well, I can do everything and checking all the boxes. There's something dispassionate about that to me, as if like 2 + 2 + 2 is 6, rather than just doing one thing well. To I
totally get it. Like, and I think
the less is more.
And especially as you get older riding, you're like, I want to focus on doing the best of this thing.
And the other part of that for me was I realised that because I always understood everything I do, rather than, oh, well, I've learned that trick, I can do it now, let's learn a new trick. That became exhausting, somewhat fleeting to me. And I was like, well, what if I could take one of my tricks and do it twice as well? Because anything I do could be done twice as well. And I became obsessed with the notion of inward progression. So rather than trying to learn 30 new things every year, I worked on the same 15 and tried to make them 30 times better. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than just go, oh, new, next. There's something like very, like, short attention span about that, having to learn a new trick.
Is that kind of what helped you dial in the 900 a little?
No, I don't know. No, that's a different story, I think. I loved my journey with 900s, but I came to hate them. It became like I made like a rod for my own back with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, was it a monkey on your back after a while?
It was absolutely a monkey on my back. Like, people expected it every contest, every run.
Yeah.
I would get to a ramp and drop in for my first run of the day, and someone would shout 900, and it was like but I couldn't not do them, and I knew that, and I wore it well, so I would always do them.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like an insecurity thing. And then if I didn't do one at a contest, heaven help me, I'd drop 5 places. Do you know what I mean? So and then also, because I did so many of them, they
wouldn't rank you high enough.
It diluted the value. I remember like getting beaten by people like Kevin Robinson or John Parker with tricks that historically have turned out to be not nearly as difficult or as good or whatever. But I only did a 900, but like Parker did a double tail whip. Yeah, it's like now there's 50,000 people who can do double tail whips, so there's still only 3 that can do that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It was weird like that. So I ended up, and I hurt myself so much. I broke more than 20 bones on that trick over the years. I've had like facial plastic surgery. I broke my nose. I've broken collarbone. I've had surgery for that. More stitches than I can remember. Yeah, lots of, like, I've had like 25 stitches in my face from stupid 900s. It's just like, what a, you know, and I remember when I decided one day, the last one I did, I crashed and broke both hands because I was trying so hard to nosedive in to keep my speed in a contest. I did it from a trick on the wall before, and I was completely planning to do something the same height and keep tricking the next wall and keep going. Yeah. And I totally took my eye off the ball because I realised that no one cares if I do a 6'1" and land heavy. It's not impressive anymore. Yeah. There's a certain bar that I'd set for myself, and if I couldn't do them that way, I didn't want to do them at all. So, and I remember the last one I did, I was so focused on that, trying to nosedive so hard, I didn't really spin enough. I came in, I landed front wheel first, and just punched the ramp with both hands, broke both hands. Yeah. And I remember Brian Foster just like laughing at me afterwards, like like he wasn't being a dick, like he was like, you know, sympathising with me and everything. But
just like how insane it was.
He was just like, Simon, what the hell? And I explained everything I've just told you, and he's like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, no, you're right, I'm an idiot. I was like, you know what? I quit 900s. I'm not doing 900s anymore.
How long ago was that?
This is like 2014, maybe. Yeah. 14, yeah. And no, 2013. And I was like, that's it, I quit 900s. And I said it out loud to myself, I'm not doing 900s anymore. And then I told a couple of my friends to call myself out. And then so I told Matt Hoffman, I was like, hey Matt, I decided I quit 900s, I'm not doing them anymore. And I remember Matt paused for thought for a second, and he looked at me, looked deep in the eye, and he went, good. No,
because he understood. Yeah,
he's like, no, it's time. He's like, you've done enough. No, that's good. He's like, you know what, Simon? 900s are the only trick that every time you do them, it's like it's your first time. It's the wildest thing. He's like, no, it's good that you stop. And I was like, really? Like, I thought he was going to.
And that's coming from the man that doesn't stop.
That was coming from from Matt.
Yeah, he doesn't stop.
Hoffman, yeah. And I was like, thanks so much.
Like Matt can see it on you, but he can't sometimes pull it to him.
And it was,
you know?
as you said, the monkey was off my back. Yeah. And it released me. And I was like, stop being insecure about your riding. I feel like the rest of my riding had caught up by then. It'd been a great door opener for me all these years, being the 900 guy, whatever that meant. And I was like, well, what will happen if I... Because I remember the day before, like, contest in qualifiers, I'd got second in qualifiers behind Jamie. And I was trying to, like, keep it down. I didn't want to beat him in qualifiers and then have to ride after him. And I didn't do a 900, but I was like, I was killing it without 900s, and then the next day when I tried to do a 900, I got last place because I crashed, and everything else became tense and compromised because I was obsessed with that one stupid trick, and I was like, it's time, I have to stop. And
you pulled more than probably anybody on the face of the planet.
Matt talked to me about this last night, because someone said, do you still keep track of them? Because I used to keep track of them because it was so special to me. I was like, I wonder if I can... Okay, the story with that, I asked Miron in the early 90s, how many 900s do you think you've done? And he said, I don't know, like 50 or 60. I was like, whoa. I pulled one.
In the early 90s?
In the early 90s.
He's so fucking crazy.
I was like, what the hell?
Fucking crazy.
So then, late 90s, the next one I pulled was at the San Francisco X Games.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I was in like 13th place after my last run, and it was all or nothing to make the final. And I landed one, my front tyre blew out, but I still rode away.
Yeah.
And I made it into the final in 9th place, and I pulled another one in the final, and I think I got third or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I pulled one.
I think you got a cover from that contest.
I think San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe I did. Maybe. And then I remember that after that, I think a week after, I pulled another one at another contest. And by the end of the year, I'd pulled like 10. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start writing them down. First one was at this one. Second one was, and I noted where I'd done them and when, and started counting. And then I remember mentioning to somebody, I was like, I'm going to see how possible it is to get to J's 50 or 60. It's going to be impossible, but let's see. And I passed 50. And then I talked about it enough people knew, like, oh, you keep track, like, how many are you up to, and all that. And it was a silly little obsession, but it was more like a memento for me, you know. But then it kind of got out of control. And then I remember Morgan Wade's wife, Natalie. I talked to her once about counting 900. So she read an interview or something, and she said that year at the X Games when I did back-to-back 900s, I did like one into another one.
I remember it.
She was like, so that was 99 and 100, wasn't it? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I kind of stopped counting. I don't know. She was like, no, because remember we talked then, and you'd done that many, and then you did this one, and then this one, so therefore you must have been up to...
that's crazy.
Like you were at 98 when you tried that. And so I was like, oh no, you're right. So it turned out that 99 and 100 was
we're in the same run.
And then at 100, I God knows how many I did after that. I kind of stopped counting after that. And
you've done alley-oop 9s too, right?
Yes. Do you know what? Matt and I talked about this last night.
Let's hear it. Yeah.
I started doing alley-oop. I remember the Worlds in Germany in let me see, when was that? 99 or 2000. 2000 it was. I'd had the idea because I'd figured out alley-oop 540s and I'd started doing them, and then a couple of other people had learned them, and I was like, so I was doing 900s and alley-oop 540s, and as we talked about, I did alley-oop a little bit into my 900s. So, you know...
You're like, I should be able to pull it.
The logic's there. So I tried one at that contest and got really, really close. And so I tried another one and pulled it.
Yeah.
And then, so I was like, I can do alley-oop 900s. And then I remember for a couple of years after that, I did alley-oop 900s. But when I took my brakes off, I haven't done one since, which was 2003.
Did you pull your brakes on 9s?
Yes. And that was the biggest thing I was scared about. Like, when I decided to take my brakes off, it was... and there's a long backstory about the hows and the whys I did that, but I was like, well, what am I going to lose? Like a because manuals are going to get really hard, and I went through all of the things that I used my brake on, but there were like 5 things, and I didn't really use my brake anyway.
Yeah.
But the attraction, I was like, you know what, let's just try it. But the one I was most worried about was 900s. Because I always used to land with my brake on to tag the landing.
Okay, just a tinker, just a little,
so it didn't loop out or whatever. But it would anchor you and then ride away from there.
The safety belt,
right? Exactly.
That's why I have my brakes on. If I don't get to ride for a while and I do an air, I got the safety belt.
I was kind of terrified. So here's what happened. The first one I tried was because I took my brakes off like the week before the Gravity Games that year in 2003. And also I flew out to go to the Gravity Games in Cleveland, and then I was going on tour with Tony Hawk's Boom Boom Hook Jam for 2 months after that. So I was like, by the end of these 2 months, I'll know whether I can ride brakeless or not. So I didn't pack any brakes on that trip. And so that Gravity Games, I tried 900 without the brake, and those dived in better than normal and pulled it perfectly. I was like, oh, I realised, I just figured out what happened. The whole time I've been pulling my brake in the air, stopped my cranks from spinning, stopped me from moving my pedals.
Keeping your front end up.
Right? And so I'd always land a little bit back wheel and tag it with the brake. But by doing that, it freed up my body motion in the air, and it helped me nosedive them a little bit. It was the best thing I ever did for 900s. Oh, wow. So they just got better. That's when I stopped doing like the 6-foot 900 land heavy right away, and started like nosediving them and coming out of them with some speed. And I did some, I remember doing one into like a head height turn down 540 or something. Like it started to work, you know.
Yeah.
And it just worked in its favour. Now, to talk about the brake thing, I had this I drove back from the south of France once from one of the first Fizz contests, and we drove all through the night. It was like a 20-something hour drive.
Yeah.
and everyone had fallen asleep, and my friend Seb and I, we were driving, and we had this long conversation about the idea of, I loved the idea of how much more creative skateboarders were on half pipes.
Yeah.
And I hated where all we vert riders had arrived at, which was we'd drop in, do 3 setup airs, do a big tabletop, do some no-footed variations, do a ken-ken, do a 540 land heavy, do some lip tricks, then do one big last trick and crash.
Yeah.
That's what we all did, and it was in a straight line in the middle of the ramp, maybe one alley-oop, and it was really boring, and I was like, it's time, I've got to evolve past that. And like, I'd spent my whole life on ramps with skateboarders, and I was always really taken with how creative a skateboarder could be, and how they could take this blank canvas and make it into this intricate, complex thing, be all around the ramp, and you just never knew where they were going to be. There's a skateboarder in the 90s from Denmark, he's still around, that Rune Glifberg, who really, really pioneered this with me. Watching Rune and being on trips with him, like, one wall he'd do like a front side nose bone, and it'd be like an optical illusion, like he was boning the front of his skateboard off the side of the ramp, then like a full width lip trick, and then a 540 in the other corner, then something back again, and he's back in that corner. You never knew where he was going to be or what his line was, and it was so incredible. And then the BMXer would drop in at the same event and just do everything in a straight line in the middle of this 60-foot wide ramp, and it was kind of embarrassing to me that that's what we were.
Yeah.
So I was like, so a skateboard has no pegs, it has no brakes, no pedal, it's the simplest implement. I was like, what if I stripped my bike back? I remember hearing a story about Dennis McCoy forcing himself. He took his, I don't know if this is true, I think I did ask Dennis about this once, but I heard this rumour that he'd taken his pegs and his brakes off to force him to do more airs, so that he didn't, because I do lip tricks, he'd always go to his default and start doing lip tricks. It would force him to, and I loved that idea. So I put all of these ideas together, and I was like talking to my friend on this long drive through the night, like, what if I took my pegs off and my brakes off and do this? And we were like, how far could we take this? Could you like get rid of your cranks and your chain? No, it's probably too far. Because
you still want to be able to enjoy the bike.
Yeah, we're like that. How far could we strip it back as a half pipe rider to just make it adaptable, and you learn different? Because if you can't grind on your pegs, you're gonna have to find a different way to do lip tricks and all of this. And if you can't rely on your brakes and then, so it was the beginning of like the best idea I've ever had in my whole life in BMX, which is how do I evolve into this creative thing?
Now, do you think sometimes with it, because I've skate friends and we've had similar conversations. Do you think now sometimes two things? Do you think sometimes the shorter wheelbase on a skateboard opens that ramp up a little more for them? And 2, do you think, I always feel, I love lip tricks on verts, like when you watch Jay ride a vert ramp.
Right, when Miron goes full speed, full width, insane.
And he's just using it,
And this was part of it. I noticed that it was only really Mirror and Miron who could keep their speed doing lip tricks, but the rest of us had to slow down. So part of this, my grand scheme was, I don't want to have to slow, if I have to slow down for it, then I'm wasting my time.
I'm just always wondering if that shorter wheelbase on a skateboard helps them, like, navigate it a little, like, where I totally see what you're saying.
I could use that as an excuse, but it was, for me, it was like, how do I overcome this? It wasn't like, why do we do this?
It just popped in my head.
No, for sure. No, and so the thing with, like, taking the brakes and pegs off and not slowing down for anything, and so to start with, I just took the pegs off, which would force me to stay in the air. I was like, who cares if I do a peg grind in a contest? No one's interested. They want to see 10-foot airs on a vert ramp, period. I should be doing 10-foot airs. So that focusing it, but I was too scared to take the brake off yet. Then Matt Hoffman took his brakes off. I was like, well, I can't do it now because it just looks like I'm copying Matt. Like everything else in vert, it's like I'm just copying what Matt does. And I'm trying to not be that. So it went for a little while. Then I had this backyard half pipe a couple of years later, and Zach Shaw was riding. He was at my house, and his brake lever got caught in a ruffle in his jeans, and he landed still in a turn down and snapped the ball off his elbow. And I always remember my mum was visiting as well, and she was sat like on the patio reading a book, and it happened like 10 feet away, right next to her, like this horrifying thing. And Zach said, you know what, that can never happen again. I'm going to take my brakes off when I start riding. And I was like, oh, I'll do it with you. In fact, let's do it right now. So I took so this is the day after he's had his surgery, and he's rehabbing at my house for a few days. So I took my brakes off that day and went out to the ramp. I was like, come on, let's go see what we're dealing with. And I just rode for like half an hour and did as many tricks as I could think of without brakes. I was like, it works. It's the best thing ever. It works.
I tried riding without brakes a few times.
Well, I never used to pull them much anyway. I never rode like with my fingers covering the lever. I always
do this, but then I realized when I rode without them, how much Like, I bet you if you watch, I'm always reaching out.
Okay.
Like, air, touch.
Well, the thing is, if you put me on a bike with a brake, I start using it again.
Yeah.
And all my old habits come back in. Because I had this idea that if my finger's on the brake lever, then there's tension running all through my finger, up my arm, into the shoulder, down one side of my body, there's tension. And that's not conducive with what I'm trying to do and trying to be.
When you do that, your body goes right back in that old training because it knows,
Of course,
you know.
Of course. So I kind of had this whole idea. So, you know, the peg thing had been great for a while, and I noticed that vert did change a little bit. People stopped slowing down to do their lip trick. Like, we kinew about the lip tricks and we liked them, but who cared? And unless you were Jay Miron doing a full speed, full ice kick, right, then it didn't count anymore. And it was kind of good. It like focused us in a little bit. So then when the brakes came off, I realised immediately it was the most liberating thing I'd ever done. I loved it.
Oh, yeah,
like all of the tension disappeared out of my riding. I feel like all of my body English improved, everything about it. And that's when I feel like my real BMX riding started, you know.
I mean...
And you understand it was all I was obsessed with learning opposite way stuff and loop stuff at the time. I was trying to expand more. It forced me. That's when I started learning tire slides.
You definitely seem like, from the outside looking in, you know, you definitely, like, if I looked at it, I feel like there is two eras
of my riding.
Yeah, like,
sure.
Like, I'm like, there's this, but yeah, I totally see it because there is that second era where you can totally tell moved everything too.
But still, for years, for almost 10 years that followed this, so my brakes have come off and everything. That's been 15 years now with no brakes.
Wow.
And it liberated me, it changed everything. I never want to put brakes back on my bike, I don't think. And then, so for years, but then I was still doing flares and turn down flares and bar spin, catch bar spin to X up, and no-handed to bar spin and all this stuff. And it was all still stuff I had to slow down. I couldn't be 12 feet out.
You couldn't put a full pump into it?
I remember doing like no-handed 540 to late bar spin, and I remember trying one like 9 feet and crashing. Like, I realised I couldn't do it 9 feet. I had to do it like 6.
Because it messed up the spin or something?
It was too much. It was horrifying. Yeah. It was it was too much. Like, whatever. and I began to hate my riding more and more and more and more and more.
Damn.
The things I was doing, because I was the same as everybody else. I do a flare and an opposite flare and a turn down flare and a tabletop flare.
Yeah.
And my flares had stopped being, like, at one point I could do them like 7 or 8 feet, like my head 7 or 8 feet above coping, and all of a sudden...
You do flares still?
I could we could go. I could probably go.
Oh yeah, now, but you're not like.
But I don't want to.
Okay.
I actively try to not do a flare.
Yeah.
Okay. But I noticed that I was doing those long, low ones, and who cares about that?
Yeah.
You know, and I was just like, I want to do things that I like, and so that was around 2012. I decided to stop doing I was like, stop doing the tricks you don't like, and that's when I really honed in on my 10 or 15, like the loves of my life, like the tricks that I love to do, like. Made my tabletops better, like just, you know, my 5s, all of that kind of stuff. And then I honestly, hand on heart, I believe that anything before 2012 I have no pride in. I don't want to talk about.
I get it.
Because I remember I went to India for a month doing shows.
Yeah.
And that was the trip where I just decided to make all of these bold decisions and come home and only be the person I wanted to be and be happy and all of that.
I like the way you look at it.
And I came back and I was just like, I'm going to take the gamble. I'm probably going to get last at every competition. I'm probably going to lose every sponsor. And I remember the first contest I rode.
Were you riding for Trek then? Or?
No, this is like,
yeah.
No, this is 2012. This is way past that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 2012, I rode for no bike company.
Okay.
I rode for like Rockstar and Vans.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember I went to the X Games and I beat Jamie in prelims by like 7 points or something. Like, I got first and he got second, and I was like, wow, it seems like the less I do, better things go.
Yeah.
And I did like a tabletop, a one-handed tabletop, a tabletop fight. Like, I did nothing, no 900s, nothing, you know. And I was just like, wow, I've never been happier with my riding.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still the same rider today as that guy from that day, but I've evolved. I've continued on that path. That's been my choice.
Like, you went to India and did some weird yoga and came.
You know, it's so funny. I remember people were always like, "Oh man, you know, people go to India and they change," and it just happened to be that was on that trip. You know, I don't know if that was India that made me do that. I'm not saying I had a spiritual awakening, but I remember being so happy on that trip and just coming home and deciding the only thing I wanted to be in my life was happy, and grateful, and, you know, so it probably was India. You know?
I mean, I could totally see that.
But I came back and just kind of like, I think just leaving the first world for a while allowed some perspective on the life that I lived, and, you know, my friendships and relationships and my riding and everything. And I just came back with I don't know, with a clearer perspective on what I wanted to be to other people, and to stop trying to do things to impress sponsors and other people, and always like playing to other people's expectations. I was like, I just have to make me happy.
Because you kind of battled that the whole time.
The whole time. I've always, where I come from in the northwest of England, everybody's so sarcastic, and in many ways, I always talk about like what a cruel upbringing it was. It was very cool, and it was very good in some ways, but
rainy and grey all the time.
Just the culture. There's just something about it. Everybody trying to keep you down. You weren't allowed to dream and have hopes, and be happy and positive,
because they didn't want you to do
no one liked
what,
you for that. You know, they all wanted to keep you down to push themselves up. That's just how the society felt, and it took me most of my life to fight my way out of that. You know, and BMX was the vehicle that I was able to use to get out, you know, because all I ever wanted to be was happy and have fun. I mean,
that's why it's such a good.
One of my favorite quotes, John Lennon. I guess there's some quote that he said that when he was at school, he was asked to write an essay about what he wanted to be, or he was asked what did he want to be when he grew up, and he said, "I want to be happy." And the teacher said, "I don't think you understand the question." And he said to the teacher, "I don't think you understand life."
Wow.
And like, how powerful is that? You know, he just wanted to be happy in spite of everything. Well, do you want to be an accountant? Do you want to be a rocket scientist? Or do you want to be a BMXer? I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of a better ambition. And if your life was that simple. So I think that's what happened to me.
And then you took that into your bike riding and made it simple. And
because the bike, there's nothing more pure to me in my life than my bike riding. And, you know, and I wanted it to feel that way. I was sick of everything I'd done to myself, trying to live up to expectations and thinking about competitions and sponsors and what the BMX world may or may not think of me. I mean, so I just stopped it. I was like, I remember having an epiphany when I was like 15. Before I did all those tricks, I had a really good bag of tricks, really good trick choice back then. Yeah. And I actually kind of reverted back to all my favourite tricks from back then. It's just I'm a bit more grown up. I feel like I can do them a little bit better now. Yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes I do this. Like, I'll look at my writing sometimes, and you know, you'll get hurt, and you know, you're always trying to chase that same dragon after you get hurt. Right. Instead, like, I'll get pissed. I'm like, I'm not like as good at ice grinds. I can't go ice grind like an enormous like I can, but you know, I'll play like some little thing in my head instead of just being like, I just need to go just enjoy it and let whatever happens, instead of always like after an injury or something going right back into the being like hard on race. Yourself. You know, and that's the thing, is I felt like I pushed myself like with my own self-ambition for like 30 years to be better and better and better, and I was exhausted. I was like, enough, I don't care anymore. I'm not trying to be the champion. I never was, you know. I'm not trying to be the best, and why am I so concerned what other people think? I just need to be happy. And then that's really come into my riding, and then I'm kind of a hermit in the BMX world in that I just hide away in North County, San Diego, with all the skateboarders at their ramp. I'm like I'm their surrogate token bike rider friend. Yeah, you know, it's not skateboard or BMX, it's Simon, and they that's the way, and that's the way it should be. You know? Just everybody using, you know. And I never really ride with other BMXers, and so therefore I don't really see that I get influenced by them that much. I definitely get influenced by the skateboarders, and like half the trick ideas I have are suggestions from my friends that skate, like we were talking about earlier. Like I started doing I've been doing tire slides for a long time, and I was trying to push that. I started thinking about, I wonder if I could do a one-footed tire slide. And I figured it out, and I learned how to do one-foot tire slides. And then a couple of months back, I was riding the ramp, and I kind of found myself in the corner, and I went to do the one-foot tire slide, but I had nowhere to go. I was on the edge of the ramp, so I went straight up and down like 4 feet, but did the exact same thing. So I did like a 4-foot air, and at the peak I took my foot off and landed and body jarred one-footed. And I was like, oh my god, oh no, you have to go through with it. I realised what I'd done wrong, and I just did it anyway. But probably from watching skaters do, what is that, like a Madonna? A Madonna, yeah. And I was like, oh my god, I've just come up with a new trick, and that's completely because I know for years there's a couple of us that do body jar type tricks. Zach Shaw and I, we talked endlessly in the 90s, like, how do we do a bike Madonna? You can't, it's impossible. Yeah, it's hard when people try to compare the tricks. And Zach always does like a one-footer, puts his foot back on, then does a body jar. Okay, and I was always like I could do those, and I'll do like a no-hander to body jar or whatever, and I was like, but it's not what we were trying to do. It's a one-footer to late body jar, whatever. But then I was like, oh my god, it's happened. But that's just being around the skateboarders all the time, rather than well, we're bike rides and we're doing bar spins today. Do you see what I mean? I'm just in a different environment, and it's affecting me, influencing me, I guess. But just so I've just been off on this journey. When I finally got happy with myself, like just wanted to be happy in my riding, and I was like, let's just start evolving the tricks that I like to do, like a lot of the body jar stuff, and the tire slide stuff, and trying to, like, lately I've been obsessed with this thing where I'll carve like an opposite air, and then I'll loop 540 out of it on the next wall.
So it's like full
and it's like
opposite of the...
It's like, I hate to use like this big pretentious word, but it's like the juxtaposition of the spins and the directions
I see
and
it.
all of that.
Because it probably feels crazy.
And I remember telling John Pover I had this idea years ago. I love the idea of being able to do a whole run without taking any limbs off or doing anything that could be perceived a trick, but just being shapes and directions and spins. Because how good would you have to be that, to have the courage to be like, to lay your riding that bare? And that was always part of this as well, getting rid of the brakes and the pegs and all of that. It was like trying to get rid of the gimmicks. And just be honest and pure, and because then you could look at it. I'm not trying to trick you with 3 extra bar spins to make it look impressive. What I do either looks good or it doesn't. Do you see what I mean? And these were like, it was like painting myself into a corner, making it so difficult for myself that I have no choice but to progress and make it look good.
When that opposite air, like into that alley-oop 5, it's probably, that motion probably feels so much different when you go into that compared
it's
to
insane how hard it was to learn that.
Yeah, because
I have to
it
do
wants
the
to throw
air
you
different. It changes the trajectories and all this. But then you start learning and dealing that way, like where you have to put your head on the opposite air and the angle at which you have to re-enter the ramp to lead you into the alley-oop correctly is so different to what you would normally just do on an air in that direction. And that in itself became a trick, but you can't put a name on that trick. It's meaningless. It's nothing. It's just linking A to B. But that became like the focus on the way I'm trying to progress, and I like the idea that I always think there are riders, you watch them and they can do really impressive things, like, you know, they can do a bar spin, catch bar spin to late tail whip, and you can be like, wow, that's clearly so difficult from that description, okay? And you watch it and it's so impressive, but then there are other people. So you watch them and you see them and you're impressed, but there are other people, you watch them do things, and it might not be as difficult as the bar spin to tail whip, but you feel them the whole time they're in the ramp. When you watch Dennis McCoy, you watch everything he does. When you watch Jerry Galley back in the day, when you watch Mikey Aitken, you feel everything that you feel their riding, and they take you on this journey where you don't even think about taking a breath.
Like when Mikey would hit a jump, you'd almost breathe in and like let out, like the way he's moving his bike through it.
So it's almost like on their blank canvas, it's just, Mikey's just like 3 very simple, elegant brush strokes, whereas somebody else is making up this very complex, like pixelated picture. You know, which is equally impressive, but it's not somehow. It doesn't have that special something that gets under your skin. And I identified this a long time ago. Like the riders that I like, they make me feel something when I watch them. Whereas there are other guys who are clearly the best BMX riders in the world, but it does nothing for me. I watch them and it's just building blocks. It's 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 = 10.
And it is freestyle.
And it's freestyle.
It's like how you perceive the best.
We're not meant to be the same. We're all meant to be different and all of that. And so all of this is just my journey in trying to be the rider that I want to be. That can have the most fun.
And that's lost a lot nowadays in BMX. I mean, who uses the word freestyle anymore? You know, let's put free back in freestyle. Like people, when we were younger, we were raised on that. I mean, it sounds silly, but you were like, I'm a freestyler. I'm a freestyler. This bike, you know, you were read in the magazines because people would write so much stuff about soul riding and stuff. And it's like, make it yours, and nowadays it's BMX, which I get.
For a long time, we wouldn't even admit it's BMX. We're like, no, that's bicycle motocross.
That's
racing. That's a different thing.
But I think that's our generation.
Freestyle.
Like something happened
you know, Shad, I think there's a bigger picture here. Is labels don't work. I've been obsessed with the notion recently that I was reading this thing about the concept of national identity. For example, you're an American, I'm British. That's meaningless. My name's Simon and your name is Shad, and I like you or I don't. I don't care what color, I don't care if you're a Muslim or if you're an American or if your skin is this color or that color. It's like, are you a dick or are you cool? That's all I'm interested in.
I was just saying this.
And even with freestyle and racing and these pigeonholes, it's insecurity. It's just it's a human condition. It's a thing we do to quantify. And I know, you know, Shad, he lives there and he's this and he does this and he's one of those. Oh, okay, I know who he is now. And it's like, no, you know, Shad.
I was just saying the same thing to Keith earlier, because I was like, so many people nowadays, you meet them or you look at their social media or this, and I think with it all, everybody's got like labels for themselves. Like before you meet someone, they want you to know all these labels. And I'm like, I don't even want that. I have one label, and my mom gave it to me. It's Shad.
Yeah.
If you want to get to know that, you'll
that's
know all the stuff
I love
about
that notion. It's like having the courage to like just look. You're gonna like me or you're not, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Either way. But I am just what I am. Just who I am.
Get to know me, and you'll know all that other
this
stuff.
is kind of a lot to do with what I've tried to do with my riding.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about freestyle and racing or skateboarders. It's like it's not. My name's Simon. I ride with some guys. Like the guys I ride with most of the time are called like Jimmy and Paul, Luke and Tony.
Yeah.
There's these people, and that's all we are. We're friends that meet at this ramp.
Yeah.
And we do our thing, whatever it is, and then we go home. And we'll text each other. I'll text you tomorrow to see if we're going to ride again. You know, just...
Yeah.
It's...
I love that because
I have a good story I want to tell you, actually. You made me think about with the freestyle and race label.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been, as I mentioned, I've always been very, very good friends with Stephen Murray. And we were having this conversation once. He made me laugh so much. We were talking about, like, what do you think about so-and-so? And I remember Stephen said to me once, we were talking about someone's riding, he said, he's a bit freestyle, isn't he? And this is as Stephen, because Stephen's a racer who became a dirt jumper.
Yeah, became like a trail rider.
He's like, no, that guy's obviously very good because he can do this and this and this, but he's a bit freestyle, if you know what I mean. Meaning, you know, like you think pegs, elbow pads.
Yeah.
You know,
totally,
all of that. And I understood what he said, and I laughed, and I was like, he's a bit freestyle. I was like, do you know what, Stephen, you're freestyle. He was like, fuck off, I'm not freestyle. Like, I'm pushing his buttons, he's my friend, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, no, you are. I was like, think about it. Once upon a time, there was bicycle motocross, there was BMX. All right. Then there was a fork in the road because you're either a racer or freestyle was born from people doing tricks on their BMX bikes.
Yeah. Okay?
So when you stopped racing and started doing the King of Dirt contest at the races, you were doing jumps, you were doing tricks. You became freestyle there and then. I was like, so by virtue of your own definition, Stephen, you are freestyle. He was like, fuck off, Tabron. I always like that.
Yeah, it's weird how, I mean, just the definitions of the words have changed. Like when I was younger, freestyle. But you could say nowadays, you're like, oh, that guy's freestyle. But it could almost be like derogatory. You're like, he's fully padded up and he's out there.
And you know what Stephen's saying? Because Stephen is, in the purest sense, is a racer who knows how to take a corner and can ride through three pump bumps before he hits the jump. He had that skill set, as opposed to a guy who's really good in a straight line at a box jump because he learnt something at Camp Woodward.
Yeah.
He's just differentiating between the two, and one's not right and one's not wrong. But a good racer clearly has a different skill set. And this a friend of mine, a freestyle motocross guy, told me that this exists. He told me how he breaks up freestyle motocrossers. He's like, you can see the guys that used to race. You can see the way they take the corner when they approach the jump. And then
I wish I raced.
And then you see the guys who are just a straight line, like they can do a cliffhanger backflip, but they can't really take a corner.
I never raced. I know when I ride, you can look at me and go, that dude's never raced.
But also, I always feel like you can spot the guy that used to ride a lot of flatland and then became.
Oh yeah. You can all of but that. Just like we were talking about with watching a dude's pump and stuff, like you can see if you've rode for a long time and you watch somebody ride, you can see their bare roots show through.
Yeah, for sure.
You're like,
sure. That's something I've so obsessively studied, like the notion of. I remember riding with Kevin Robinson once, and Kevin was like a powerhouse for a while. You know, he used to be a bodybuilder and all of that, and that kind of came out in his riding a bit, and you know, he'd muscle his way through things. And I remember seeing him drop in once, like pedal full tilt across the top of the ramp, drop in, pump, do like an 8-foot air, land low and go 4 feet the second wall.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey Kevin, can I say something? Like, as your friend, I don't mean to be like a dick here, but can I just noticed something, and I feel like I've got to tell you.
Yeah.
I was like, what if you just went in a little bit slower and went 6 feet first wall, but then went 8 feet the second wall? I was like, you're giving yourself too much to do, and I get it, we all do that, but you're going in like with all this speed and power, like you got Metallica in your head. I was like, put some Bob Marley on in your head and just ride mellow, like use positive body language, just be light, riding across top of the ramp, going a bit slower, land a bit lower, and give yourself a chance to get in the ramp rather than going in and blowing it on the first wall. You know, like over-ramping kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we've really talked about this over the years, Kevin and I. And he tried it. He's like, no. He's like, that's cool. Like, thank you for telling me that. Like, I'll try. And he's like, no, you're right. I was like, I only say it because I do it. We all do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't see it myself. But as your friend, I can kind of see it. So I've spent years studying my riding and studying other people's riding and trying out like the body language and stuff. And I realized that it's like the Bruce Lee theory of, rather than being like a big tough guy in a fight, but like a slender guy who's loose like Bruce Lee, he can use your strength and power against you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if you could apply that and flow more like water, as Bruce Lee famously said?
Yeah.
You know, and be more at one with the ramp. But I always feel like the better a ramp is, the more it can sense your tension and it ends up working against you.
I can see that.
So if you can just loosen up, then this is something that I guess Brian Blyther just knew when he was born, that Mikey Aitken just naturally had. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And other people like me, I had to think about it and work it out for
when
myself.
I have to do it to me, because I've always been growing up. Like, I always looked at, like, you know, Augustin, and like I was always drawn towards powerful, aggressive riders.
They looked like they meant it, you know.
Yeah, and I loved that about it. But then wanting to ride like big tranny or vert and stuff, I learned sometimes that would come against me. Like I'd go get in, get fast, then you'd be like, fuck, I landed low this first wall. Why the fuck did I land?
And it goes as well, like doing too many tricks.
Yeah.
Like everything, it starts to compromise your ability to be loose and go fast and land smooth and go high and all of that. And like I said earlier, that's kind of the one thing that I'm really, really trying to do. So I had to like sacrifice all of these other things, which, let's face it, no one cares about them anyway.
Yeah.
And I was busy thinking, oh, well, you know, what's going to happen if I don't do flares and people don't see me do bar spins? And like, what was I even thinking? Who knows? But it was like this big conscious decision to just try and become the rider I wish I could be, you know. And it's a journey that I'll never end, you know. You just trying to be, honestly, it's like I want to get to the point where I could watch myself on a video and not have to cringe, or I see a picture of myself and not be like, oh god, that's ugly.
Yeah. How close are you to that?
I don't know. I'm like my own biggest critic. I occasionally I'm like, I'll see things and I'll be kind of like a little bit proud, maybe.
Yeah.
I like it. I don't think my riding's ugly anymore.
Well, good.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like another big thing. There's a really good old friend of mine who was a pro skateboarder. I first started doing demos when I was like 15 or 16 with. And he said to me once, he said, you know what, Simon, you bike riders, you do these things in the air, like, you know, you'll do like a switch hand to grab the handlebars and stick your hand over here, or you'll do this one hand. It just looks like you're signaling like I'm going to turn left or something.
Yeah.
He's like, why don't you focus more on shapes in the air? He's like, in skateboarding, I feel like it's not like doing this one footer, sticking your foot out here and this one hander over here. It's more about tweaking the board and the body to make these shapes and these fluid movements in the air.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get that out of my head. So for years I began obsessing with, like, the benchmark was for me, I didn't want to look like I was trying to tell everyone I'm about to turn left.
Yeah.
You know, like signaling. And I was like, well, what if I could keep my... It's like the thing I said to Pova about keeping my limbs on. You know, forcing yourself to make things look nice. And then if you look through BMX now, you think about it, that's become a thing now, I think. I think a lot of people are really good at that now.
Yeah.
Like, I see it and I notice that people appreciate the art, whereas I know in the early days of freestyle, people were like, oh, that's great, any of us could do that, but he just did a no-foot one-handed can-can, and more is more, you know? And I was really afflicted by that viewpoint, I think, and guided by that for the longest time, until I just decided, you know, it took me a long time to realise, actually, I don't like that.
Yeah.
It's not what I'm trying to be, and I don't think it's fun, and it's not that it's not impressive, but other people can do it better than I can anyway, and that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And so I just found a way to just make my riding the thing that I want it to be for me.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I think is the only way I can really describe it.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's one thing I always try to tell people. I'm like, you know, we're talking about going high and make things simple. I go, the older I get, sometimes the more I just want my bike riding to be what I wanted when I was 14. Is just go high and fast.
Right.
You know, I'm like, when you come into it, your thoughts about it are almost so pure. You're just like, why do you ride bikes?
Yeah,
jump high and go fast on.
It's probably a great analogy for life. Like, the longer you do it, the more cluttered and distracted it becomes, you know, whereas when you're a kid, you're like, no, I just want to go really fast and go really high. Yeah. Like, where, at what point did that get lost? I mean, probably when you found out how hard it is to go fast and go high. Where you're like, smooth, I can do a no-footer at this point and still impress this group of people. Right. Because I can't go as high as that guy yet. There's just like this crazy honesty through it where I can't trick myself. I can't use gimmicks. Yeah. And yesterday, for the first time in ages, I was riding with Matt Hoffman yesterday, and we were talking about bar spins, and I said, I don't think I've done a bar spin in like 8 months. I was like, and because Matt was like, I haven't done one in ages, and he wanted to do one. So it was kind of like, I said, I'll do one if you do one, kind of thing. And I did a bar spin, and it was fine. And then I said, oh, I know what I used to do that I used to like, was like a no-hander to bar spin. But I was like, this riding vert I'm doing there. And so I did like a tuck no-hander to bar spin. And like, I'd stopped doing that for the longest time because I feel like it's a gimmick. Yeah. I was like, don't half do two things, just do one of them and do it well. Yeah. Just do like that perfect no-hander and just leave your hands off a second longer and just let it hang and make sure the shape's right and nose dive in and go the same height the next side. Like, that's my focus. So it's almost like I feel like yesterday was a bit of a cheap gimmick doing a no-hander. But you see what I mean? Like, this is the voice in my head that I have to deal with, that I have to live with, that I have to fight against and answer to.
Do you want to go through some of the questions some people sent us?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I think there might be some good ones. Let's see. Let me get this thing going. Because I'm sure somebody's going to know a question that I didn't ask. One question I did want to ask, especially since we were kind of talking about, the simplicity of styles. Who are like some dudes that you enjoy watch riding right now? I know you ride as skaters and stuff, but when you do see some riding, like who's somebody out there that you're like excited about?
I mean, I love the notion of what Tommy Dugan does and what Larry Edgar does, because it's everything that we've talked about. It's simple and it's fast and it's completely unique. I always thought that the mark for me of a great rider that I like watching is you could watch them in silhouette and still be able to pick them out. You'd be like, that's Larry Edgar.
Okay.
And there's just this fire and this fury and this style and this flow and this uniqueness to everything he does.
Yeah.
That there's no one else that can ride like him, and he blasts so high and lands smooth and all of that. Tommy Dugan, I love. There's a recklessness to him. I really like broadening it a little bit. I really like Chris Kyle and I really like Kevin Peraza, just because when I watch them, they stand out so much. There's just so much riding talent these days that it's kind of hard to pick people out. Yet those two just stand out so much for their complete uniqueness, and there's like almost like an effortless flow and style and like a playfulness, a mischievousness about both of them. When you watch them ride, they just make you feel good about BMX, and they make it look good, and it's almost like you can tell that they're cool people. Yeah, and they just completely have this unique take, and I love that. I always say in BMX, it's not. The thing, it's not important to me to be as good as everybody else. We need originals. That's the thing.
Definitely,
just these original characters. That's what really interests me.
When you have robots, it's hard for people to look at that and want to get.
And the thing is,
I
don't want to compliment people and for it to be a backhanded insult against other people.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that if you're not like that, then everything is amazing, and it's everyone's different, and it's just they're the things that just appeal to me, and I think a lot of it is to do with it's aspirational from me. It's seeing things that appeal to me that I wish I could be a bit more like that. Yeah. Rather than just like, well, that's really cool and that's really impressive to me, but I can't relate to it because I would never do it. Yeah. I think that, it's easy. There's a lot, like I'll see someone do like a tail whip front flip with a late bar spin. Yeah. And I feel nothing, when I see that.
I get it.
But holy crap, that's so impossibly difficult and impressive. So why do I feel so little when I see it? Do you know what I'm saying? It's the weirdest thing.
I know,
and I'm not putting it down. It's
hard to judge somebody else's riding like that because you don't know what they're bringing into that trick for them. But
and also, like, who cares what I think about their riding? Yeah. Like, I don't know what kind of rider they're trying to be. Yeah. It's like somebody called me out in the late 90s. They called me a sellout once. I remember because I wrote for Trek for a minute, and that really helped me, and it got me to America and all of that. Yeah. And I was like, wait, hold on a second. Like, what do you mean a sellout? They're like, oh, with all those logos and all of that, and these sponsors, and I was like, but how can you call me a sellout? How can you accuse me of selling out? You don't know what I bought into in the first place. I will tell you. When I was a kid, I looked up to like Mike Dominguez and people like that, and they had logos on their chests. They were sponsored professionals. They were ramp riders. That was all I ever wanted to be. So at which point have I sold out? Like, it's kind of happening for me. Yeah. I was like, so I hear what you're saying, and I'm not trying to have a fight with you. I'm just saying that you're wrong. Like, I'm anything but a sellout. Yeah. I'm following my dream, and that's the thing is, you can't accuse me based on your ethics and ideals of being a sellout because you don't know what mine are. Yeah. I'm just different to you, and it's not right and it's not wrong. It's just different. Yeah. So I think that's an awful lot to do with it as well. Just
sometimes I feel like how hardcore BMX got a little in the late 90s.
Well, just becoming like high school bullies.
There was like so many rules.
I remember in the 90s, I always used to joke about there was like a crew in England, And I was just, they were very, very judgmental, and they had very certain rules about certain things and what could be done by who, where, when. And then if one of them liked something that broke the rules, I was like, oh, quick, back to the clubhouse for a policy meeting. Oh, you confused. There's a conflict now. And I'm just like wait, so I used to get made fun of because my bars were too big. Now I'm getting made fun of because they're too small. And that, and my bars have been the same. It's just things change. And then a lot of this, I honestly, I don't really think I get made fun of. I'm not like whining or anything. I'm just saying that all of this is just everything I was trying to get away from when I found BMX in the first place. I was trying to get away from the factions and the high school bullies and just anybody putting somebody else down to make themselves look good. I'm not interested in that. And all of that is based in that. It's somebody's own unhappiness and insecurity to make a rule to make them look good. If I make these rules and you're breaking them, then you're wrong. And
then I have something to hold over you.
And this is the thing I like about vert. Of all the things that I love in BMX and all the different kind of ridings I've done, all the different kinds of riding I've done in BMX, the thing about vert to me is you can't fake it. Yeah. Everything else you can have an interpretation, you can have a take on it. But with vert, it makes fools of all of us. You can't fake that. Oh, well, I'm a certain kind of specialist in this kind of vert riding. It's like, no, you're really, really good or you're not. And you can't hide it on a vert ramp. Do you see what I mean? It's out there. And I think that's a lot to do with, that's one of the many reasons why it's probably not that popular. It's hard. It takes a lot of humility and a long, long time to begin to look good. And then someone just comes up and goes, oh, yeah, that was quite good. Wait, have you seen Jamie Bestwick? He can do that 3 times as good as you. Yeah. And again, it's the high school insecurity mentality or whatever.
Why do you think, and we talked about that earlier, but since you just said, what do you think keeps kids from being interested in vert nowadays? I mean, I have my little theories.
I think the ramps are really big and really prohibitive. I think the notion of having to wear a full face helmet all the time. I think the idea that it's actually really, really frightening and dangerous. Yeah. And it's not about perceptions. It really is frightening and dangerous. Yeah. It's horrifying sometimes. And then the vert dudes are all in their 40s. I always tell this story about when I was a little kid. Whatever music, when I first discovered music for myself, had my own music that I liked. When I was 13, I was all about Iron Maiden, and dads and uncles are like, oh, you don't want to listen to that rubbish, you want to listen to the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, and David Bowie, and this is the stuff that's way better than that rubbish that you listen to. But what they didn't realise was at the time I was 12 years old or 13 years old, and I remember seeing Mick Jagger and David Bowie doing that Dancing in the Streets cover on TV, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to like. Yeah, they're like the singer from the Stones and David Bowie, they changed everything. I'm like, these are creepy old dudes. Yeah. Thanks, it's alright, I'm going to listen to some heavy metal instead, some Metallica. And I think the same thing in BMX. It's if you stand me next to Dennis McCoy, next to Jamie Bestwick, but those 3 years when the X Games were in Austin, the 3 of us locked out the podium on 2 of those 3 years. And the last time, I remember last year it was in Austin after the contest, and they were going to do the podium presentation or whatever. I remember I was laughing and I shouted really loud. I was like, would everybody in their 40s please report to the podium? And I knew it was kind of a joke, but it wasn't good. It doesn't make vert look good. Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, yeah.
And that's why I really feel like a good thing for vert will be, we shouldn't have to stop, and I don't see why any of us should retire or stop. Certainly not Jamie or Dennis, but I do ask myself a lot of the time, would it be better if I just left? And I don't need to be in contests necessarily, and let the thing die a little bit and refresh. Because how hard must it be to compete against Jamie Bestwick? I can tell you, it's really, really difficult. Yeah. Why is that interesting to anybody? And if you're not going to probably ride contests and do all of that, then it's easier to actually not go and ride that big horrifying ramp and buy the $400 full face helmet and all of that. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's almost like the thing will fix itself, it will reset and it will refresh. But when you think of vert now, unfortunately, you probably think of dudes in their 40s. Yeah. So it's not interesting, it's not appealing, it's not cool, it's not new, it's not easy, it's not accessible. It's a lifelong commitment. However, you say all of that, there's a couple of people every generation who still really want to be vert riders, and they do become great vert riders. And the best are yet to come. Who knows? Maybe the ramps need to get smaller for a bit. Harry Main said to me once, he said, Simon, did you grow up riding 14-foot tall ramps? And I said, no, of course not. And he said, well, how can you expect me to? Yeah. And how can I argue with that? But then I remembered after that, there did used to be a 14-foot tall ramp in Liverpool, where I grew up.
That's really big for back then.
Yeah, it was this 70s relic of this skate park in this public park. And it was a 14-foot tall, 12-foot wide quarter pipe with no deck. and the top 2 feet used to wobble when you took off. So it's almost like you had to time your re-entry slightly.
Yikes.
And like, so I learned to ride that when I was a little kid. It was at the bottom of the hill, and it was sheet metal, so it was super fast and perfect and smooth. And a bunch of us could go like 5-6 feet on that ramp.
Yeah.
So I kind of could ride big ramps back then, and that's when.
But most dudes grew up riding
6, 7, 8 foot ramps.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up riding 8 and 9 foot ramps.
And then we evolved to like 10 foot ramps, and then 11, and then 12, and then we got to 13, and we're like, whoa. And then like one of the ramps I ride is 14 and a quarter or something like that. But I know that like the 14 and a quarter ramp doesn't make sense until you're above about 7 or 8 feet out. That's when it really comes into play. And like, that's the ramp I've gone highest on in my life. But it's no fun below 7 or 8 feet. And that's of no interest to anybody.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it'd be nice if there were some smaller ramps where a kid could look at it and wrap his head around. And I think the same with like dirt, trails and stuff too.
Yeah, of course. But also, everything that we do, like most of what we do on a vert ramp exists elsewhere.
Yeah.
In BMX anyway, on other ramps, and that's fine. Like, do you know what? If vert dies, so be it. I've been asked 1,000 times, like, what's wrong? You need to do this. You need to do that. No, we don't. It is what it is. BMX is bigger than me or you or any of us. You know, it will evolve. It will be its own thing. You know, it'll go into the Olympics. It'll do whatever it wants, and it doesn't really matter what I think. I'm just privileged to be involved and have my time in it, and take from it what I want. And like talking about the Olympics, just when it goes to the Olympics, it's not really going to change anything anyway. It's not going to affect the way you and I ride every day.
Yeah.
And why should it? But maybe it'll have some positives. Who knows? And honestly, I don't even have an answer to any of that. You know,
that's such a complicated topic.
I think all of it, we just got to let it go. The thing with vert, if vert comes back, maybe it'll be because of smaller ramps, but if there was an answer, don't you think we would have found it by now? It will fix itself.
Yeah.
Maybe it has to die and then like a phoenix rise from the flames, just go out of favour for a bit, but then somebody, and like, if none of us older guys were around, imagine somebody like Dennis Ennison. I can tell you factually, Pat Casey, I know how good they are on a vert ramp.
Oh yeah.
But there's nothing in it for them right now.
Yeah.
But maybe things change. Maybe they'll be like, you know what, maybe I'm going to spend some time. Who knows? Who knows what the future is?
Yeah.
But there will always be vert riders and there'll always be vert ramps.
I do like sitting on... One of the things I like best about it is if you just have that good little backyard ramp, that sitting on a small deck and small, close parameters with your buddies talking about tricks and rolling in, that is a nice feeling that I don't think you get sometimes at a big cement park or something.
Of course.
When you're crammed in on the deck pushing each other.
And it's weird, like I agree with you, the best days of my life have been spent on an imperfect backyard ramp.
Yeah.
But now we can roll up to like multi-million-dollar skate park plazas and developments everywhere, and they were all kind of the same. I feel like I've ridden all of them before. I mean, it's better for you, like up in the Northwest. That's where the real concrete exists for me, because everything's so utterly unique and challenging and fantastic. But like in most of the big cities now, the parks, they're just all kind of samey.
They're getting Lego blocky.
And yeah, that's exactly, and they're so perfect that I'm kind of indifferent. I've ridden them in some configuration or other at some point anyway, and it doesn't really do anything for me. But it's almost like, like with tennis. Tennis is played on a rectangle with a ball and a net and 2 bats. It's so simple, and there's so much that somebody's into tennis can extract from that, and there's so much fun and so many variations, and such complexity can come out from such simplicity. Yeah. And to me, I kind of love that about the vert ramp. It's just this very, very simple thing.
I totally agree,
that just riding around it isn't enough. I have to paint that picture. It's the simplest blank canvas.
Yeah, it's there. Like, some people will be like, I love street riding because there's this, and there's such an open world. But almost when you do ride a vert ramp, it's just you and those 2 walls, and it's what you can create. It's not what you can find, which is street riding.
Right, of course.
Which is awesome, finding new stuff. But it's what you can create, or what challenge you set in front of yourself and how you reach it, And
also, and another thing is like these days with vert, especially because I spend so much time with skateboarders, I really do feel like the last vert rider on earth sometimes, and I love that. Yeah. Because this was always just meant to be my thing for me, and if it was popular and everybody did it, I'm a horrible person. I probably wouldn't. There's a reason I don't watch American Idol, and I don't like anything mainstream, because by definition, if something's mainstream and popular, it must be compromised. Yeah. So there's a lack of purity. Whereas my thing, even the other vert riders don't like to come and ride with me necessarily. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like my niche is so just me. And I'm not trying to say to anyone else this is what you should be doing. I'm not saying it's good or better or anything. It's just my thing for me. And at this stage in my riding in my life, I kind of really like that secretly.
I can see that. Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
I mean,
it's just my thing for me, my interpretation. That's all it is.
And that's probably how you started out. So, just wanting it to be for you.
I guess so. I guess.
Yeah. All right, here, let's run through some of these questions. All right. Bristol just wants to know if you got to lose one trick, can or turn down.
Oh, that's a good question. It's easy. I would lose the turn down.
Oh, see, I said the same thing. I like both tricks, but
I mean, two monumental tricks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do like a turn down 5 and a turn down and an alley-oop, but a can. I have like 25 takes on that. It's everything that I've obsessed with all my life.
if you can do a can nice, it's like the Lee Reynolds.
Oh God, I
just chasing that.
Yeah, I never tire of that trick.
So
yeah, I would lose the turn down.
Okay.
Probably against popular opinion there.
No, I think I totally think it's against popular opinion.
Of course.
I totally. Casey Smith wants to know. He says your style's very inspiring to him for a long time. Well, we went over this one kind of. How long you been brakeless?
2003.
2003.
Yeah, I like Casey Smith a lot. He's an incredible and inspiring writer in himself. A great original, a true original.
He is a true original.
Like I follow him on Instagram, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Casey.
And he says, where do you kind of see BMX? I mean, see vert in 10 years. I mean, I don't know if we really touch that.
I mean, 10 years from now, we shouldn't all be riding.
I think we may have said that 10 years ago.
Guys, I mean, I look at Vince Byron at the cutting edge, and he's like the tricks he does are incredible and very hard and very dangerous. And I don't know who's going to come along and be able to do tricks like all his flare whips and like lots of the stuff that like Kyle Baldock and Logan Martin, those guys do, but he does that in the vert context, and it's like it makes no sense to me. It's incredible. So perhaps it go more that direction, or maybe you'll still have people just trying to do easy tabletops. I don't know. Maybe the ramps will get small, but there'll be new blood. It will exist in some shape or form. I hope it continues to evolve. I hope it doesn't go underground and it'll take backward steps. But maybe it does. Like I said, maybe it does have to take backward steps, and we need some 10-foot tall, 12-foot wide half pipes in backyards to like reinvigorate the thing.
Yeah.
You know, let people go back to square one.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if this one means anything to you. Not Nick Rudder says, who sprayed bullocks on the ride ramp? Does that make any sense to you?
It does make sense to me, but I don't know the answer. I remember what the ride ramp was, and I don't know who did spray bollocks. I'm not sure if maybe that could have been me. That doesn't sound like me. The ride ramp actually, I don't know. No, I think maybe he means the one at Mark Noble's house, like his own ramp.
Yeah.
At the ride offices. That probably was me.
Okay.
Because I was involved in building that. It sounds like something I would do.
Okay.
And you know what bollocks means? Bollocks is like a catch-all English word for like something can be the bollocks, meaning it's good, or if you say that's bollocks, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's And if somebody shouts at you, they give it like your parents could give you a bollocking if you do something wrong. That's like a telling off. So.
Okay. I don't know what this one means. Benny BMX 43 says 96 spokes and the rim's still dented.
Do you remember those 95 spoke
the
wheels
styling
back
wheels
in the day? The manly wheel. It was a comical. I did run those for a minute, and they were terrible. They were useless. You couldn't get tension in the spokes.
Yeah.
It was thinking.
You had to have
thinking
special
they were gonna be a lot
spoke wrenches.
I don't even remember. I remember I rode them for 5 minutes and I smashed like 3 sets of them and just went back to 48s. But like, what a stupid gimmick. I mean, that's something that happened, I think, a lot in the 80s and a little bit in the 90s when we were finding ourselves. There was a lot of gimmicky bike parts.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think bikes were super high tech, but looking back, you're like, oh, they were just trying to figure it out.
Look at like how perfect and simple a bike needs to be.
Yeah.
You know?
We went over mid-school BMX. He asked why you took off your brakes and stuff, so I think we pretty much went over that.
But like in a nutshell, just to release myself, to free myself, or to force creativity.
Yeah.
You can't slow down if you have no brakes, right?
Somebody asked about why'd you stop doing the 900. We went over that really good.
A mixture of, I was just exhausted from injury, and it was the monkey on my back, like you said. I was just sick of the expectations and the pressure of it.
Some dude goes, do you ever practice into foam?
I do not.
Okay.
It's like, I've tried, and it's like pulling teeth. I hate it. hate
I
it.
hate it.
And like even resi, it's like you have to. It's like a skill set in itself just to learn to use it. And I do admire people who can use it, but for me, I'm like, do you know what? It's just easier to just try it on the ramp.
Yeah.
And like give myself and work up to it, like rather than just. I see lots of people like, oh, I think I'm going to try and learn flip whips, and they just try one that's wild, and they do. After 50, you start to get an idea. Whereas to me, I'd be like, well, go and learn backflips, and like learn all the elements of it until one day you can just that day presents itself, and you get the devil in you, and you're like, today's the day, let's find out, and you try that first one. I mean, like alley-oop 540s, for example. I'll use that. Like I saw someone try one. It's Eric Steele, Crazy Eric, back in the 80s, and he killed himself. He like hung sprocket. And I talked to him years later. He said he wasn't even trying an alley-oop 540. He was actually trying a 900. He just stopped at 540 and hung sprocket and crashed. But I was like, I saw an alley-oop 540. And then somebody told me once that Hugo Gonzalez had tried one as well.
I could totally see
right, which
that.
makes sense. I know he like alley-oop 720'd off the side of a quarter pipe or something like that. So but no one did alley-oop 540s. And my first X Games in San Diego in '98, I saw a skateboarder called Giorgio Zattoni from Italy. He came down the roll-in at the start of his run and alley-oop 540'd the first wall, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And like, so you put all of that together. Years earlier, I think early 90s, I'd done an alley-oop 540 like off an extension on a mini ramp.
Yeah.
Like into the mini ramp, but not really in the vert context. It was only a tiny one. But I remember after seeing Giorgio do it, I went home and I was like, I think I'm going to try them. And I just went to the ramp one day and just like did a couple of like little alley-oops, like 2 feet over coping or something. And then was just like, all right, well, let's just send one, see what happens.
Yeah.
And I spun alley-oop 540, and I remember I pulled my. This is back when I still had brakes. I pulled my brake to anchor the landing, and I took one foot off and kicked the ramp, but kind of like didn't crash.
Yeah.
I kind of got to 540, like skidded a little bit, and put my foot down and kind of like shuffled away. And did another one. It was kind of like that, and then I just kept my foot on and pulled one.
Nice.
But to me, that was. I built, like, I learned all the elements involved in the trick, and then just put them together and just tried it. But now you'd go and learn that on a resi, well, you'd learn it in the foam first, and then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course I followed the logic, and, we kind of wish we had that when we were kids, but I don't. I don't regret not having that stuff. It's kind of, it forced me to learn in a different way, and almost like a more honest way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I totally do.
And I take nothing away for, like, new is new. Maybe
everything, generations are always different, and you can't hate on...
No, of course. It's amazing, the progression. I remember we went to this contest in Switzerland in the late 90s, and they had a 10-foot wide channel on this vert ramp and a big roll-in, which was basically like a big wedge ramp, like a big flat bank, kind of like you get in the Vans Park series now. Okay. And I remember trying to alley-oop 540 that 10-foot channel, but I could alley-oop far enough to clear the channel, but the ramp itself wasn't wide enough for me to get the line on the wall before, to get the sufficient angle, if you see what I'm saying. So I remember, I was like, but it'll be okay, because I can just land in the channel on the wedge if I don't get far enough. And so at that contest, I did a couple, like, alley-oop 5'd onto the thing and rode away. And Kevin Robinson told me that that's what gave him the idea for the vert resi ramp. And he went back to Woodward and he talked to Gary Room and said, I saw Simon do this thing, he landed on this thing. What if we did that on the vert next to the vert ramp? We could just learn tricks onto this bank.
I didn't know that
and
was
we could make it padded
really.
and all of that. Because, we knew the technology existed for box jumps.
Yeah.
But it hadn't happened in a quarter pipe context yet. And so he talked to, like, this is what he told me. He went back and like, they sketched it up and he talked to Gary Room and they made their first.
Yeah, I worked at Woodward. I
Resi
remember when the resi vert ramp was there.
Okay.
I remember dying on it, trying to go high on a 540. It just made me feel too comfortable where...
It's just, some people talk about why would you jump out of a perfectly good plane?
Yeah.
It's like, why would you air out of the side of a perfectly good vert ramp?
I got jacked on it.
I don't know.
Real BMX wants to know, he said the UK BFA had incredibly talented riders competing. Who are some of your favorite riders that competed in?
Lee Reynolds, Carlo Griggs, Stephen Laidlaw, Craig Campbell, Neil Ruffle, Mike Canning. This is hard now because these guys they changed my life. Greg Guillot, I said Lee Reynolds. Andy Brown was incredible, really nice to me when I was a little kid. Just the wildest, most aggro style.
Yeah.
Just capable of anything. And all those riders had all very, very different styles, but it was all so amazing. The Hudson brothers that I talked about, Mick Hudson was one of my all-time favorites. David Frame, incredible. I'm trying to think. I don't want to leave anybody out. Scott Carroll just influenced me and changed my life forever. God rest his soul. Lots of good riders, and don't forget that's where Jamie came from.
Yeah.
Jamie came from the UK BFA days.
I think we kind of covered that one. Fraser Byrne wants you to tell a story from the New Quay backyard vert ramp.
Okay.
What did neighbors say, and how long did it last?
Oh, that was ridiculous. I moved down to this town called Newquay in the southwest of England.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a different climate to the rest of England. There's like white sandy beaches and palm trees. It's kind of in the Gulf Stream that comes across the Atlantic from the Caribbean. And so it's 10 degrees warmer, it's a bit drier and everything. It's really, really nice down there, Cornwall. And so I moved down there and there was no vert ramp. So I got this new house and I built the vert ramp in the garden. Now I was working with the city down there to try and get a park built, and we were going to have a vert ramp there.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was like, at very worst, I'd be okay once the park was built. But the neighbours immediately... Like I remember when I built it, I wrote a letter to every single neighbour and explained that, I would use it respectfully. I didn't build like handrails on the top, so it didn't, you could see it over the fence a little bit, but it wasn't, I was like, we weren't going to be noisy, we weren't going to have like big get-togethers. I was a professional bike rider, it was purely for my riding. I'd maybe have the odd friend over, but if they had any questions, any complaints, please just talk to me. And most of them were good, but the one neighbour, and then the local councillor kind of turned on me, and then I had to apply for planning permission and all of this, and the planning permission got rejected. So I disputed it, and then I guess it became like a national news story. I ended up like live on BBC
Whoa.
News talking about it, and they were saying like, well, if like a world class tennis player wanted to build a tennis court at his house, he'd be allowed to do that. Can't this guy? But then the other people were saying, well, it's awful, it's really loud and it's really tall and it's noisy, and he can see into our yard from the top of it, and everything like that is unacceptable. And it became this horrible joke, and then in the end I lost and had to tear it down anyway.
Damn.
And it was just a bummer, it was just sad. And it was like one neighbour, and I remember they, like a year or two after we had to tear the ramp down, the one neighbour came over. He said, "Hey, I saw you on TV the other day. It's really good what you do on that bike." And I was just like, "Yeah." It was just sad. I was like, "You don't get to champion me now,
Yeah.
Like you killed a little boy's dream."
Yeah. All right. Here's the last one. He said it's Emmer Johan, and he wants to know is the kind of. He put legendary in quotation marks, but like maybe the perceived vert rivalry between some of you top guys generally healthy, and who's your favorite person to compete against?
The legendary vert rivalries, they've always been, maybe I'm going to spill the beans here. I'm hesitating for a second. They've always been awful. I remember around 2006, 2005, I was so unhappy because we'd all begun as friends doing the same thing, but we'd all kind of become these X Games stars or whatever, and we're on TV, and everybody had big houses and was making money and fancy cars, and we were living a ridiculous dream, and everybody became like so kind of petty and possessive, and so wouldn't talk to that person had fallen out with this, so had said this in an interview, and he'd beaten him, and no one was friends anymore. And I remember I just didn't really like it anymore. I didn't like being around them, and I was really, really, really unhappy being a professional bike rider. And I was just like, I love riding, but I don't know that I want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was ridiculous because I had the job of my dreams. Like I lived this dream privileged life. So I was like, so why was I so unhappy? And I was like, so I have to do one of two things. I either have to turn it around and get happy, or I have to quit. It's that simple. I was like, so let's try and turn it around and get happy. So I remember 2006, the beginning of that year, I went round to everybody that I hadn't been talking to, every one of the vert riders that I'd fallen out with in some way, shape or form. And I was like, look, we all used to be really good friends. Everyone kind of got the same speech from me one-on-one. Like, we all used to be really good friends. And like, but so much has happened. We've all like made this money and become stars or some bullshit. And, and we're not friends anymore, and it's not fun, and I hate it. And I want it to change. I want us to be friends again. Like, we're all so lucky, and there's only so few of us in this privileged position. like, and everyone was just, I remember just everyone was so receptive. It was like, no, my God, you're right. And every single one of us became friends again for a while.
Yeah.
And it was so nice. And then, you know, inevitably, you know, that new people come in and there's new rivalries and people fall out with each other and all that. But I don't feel like it's ever been bad since then. But for a while, it was really toxic. Like, people hated each other.
Oh, that's crazy.
And people wouldn't talk to each other at the ramp. And I was like, we used to be friends in the back of a van, like, hucking ourselves for $200 prize money. When did we become these monsters, you know? Mm-hmm. It was horrible. And so yeah, but then there's a lot of rivalries that are healthy, but you know, like a lot of the big name guys like Miron and Mirror and all of that over the years, it was there were definitely some terrible rivalries. Jamie, and then I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it was not something I ever. It made me just kind of like become a bit of a recluse, rather than like, that's why I couldn't go to Woodward and be in the bubble with all the gossip and the intrigue and the drama and all of that. I was like, I just have to go hide away, and actually that's why I like riding with skateboarders. Do you see what I mean? I'm no threat to anybody. They're just my friends, and so I don't think it's the vert riders it's just a human thing, you know.
Yeah, a tribal weird thing.
Yeah, it's just a strange trait, you know. We're all flawed, and yeah, it's the one thing I haven't enjoyed has been the rivalries, to be honest. It always bummed me out.
But is there somebody that you used to ride contests maybe with that you'd see ride that would maybe you get excited about, that would want to make you ride harder?
Jay Miron.
Jay
Miron and I were, like, we were always, I want to say we were always allies.
Yeah.
We always felt like outsiders that had to work really hard to get there.
Jay always used that as a chip on his shoulder
He
to
did
go harder.
a little bit, but he and I just felt like he always looked out for me, and he was always like super good to me.
I think Jay's misread a lot.
No, of course, and I just think that he and I, we never fell out. I've only got good things to say about Jay, and I always loved being on the ramp with him. I respected his riding so much. I respected his character. I liked him. He was funny.
Yeah, and
I just always enjoyed being on the ramp. But these days, you know, my favourite is Coco.
Oh yeah,
Coco and I, we have such a brotherly love, the two of us, you know. I sometimes feel like he's like my younger brother, you know, and we just see eye to eye on the whole thing, and we're no threat to each other. Do you know what I'm saying? We appreciate and value each other, and if he does well, that's like a triumph to me. That's a success for me, you know, and vice versa. And it's the very best kind of friendship. I really like that.
Nice. Well, I think we're about done. Do you have anybody you want to thank, or anything we didn't touch on, or anything?
Just I think just the people I want to thank is everybody that I've interacted with in all these years of BMX, because it's such a privileged journey to be involved in BMX. You know, forget being sponsored or pro or you know, all the things that go with it. Just to have been able to do this thing for all of these years.
Yeah.
And just all the fun and the good times I've had with everybody, you know, any of the fallings out. Like the rivalries I was talking about, I'm sure I played my part in a lot of them. I definitely pushed a lot of people's buttons. I mean, like, do you remember that one time back in the day I had that sticker on my helmet that said foam free? And that and that wasn't like super serious, but it was to push people's buttons. The story behind that, somebody was like, "Oh, what new tricks have you got for the X Games this year?" I was like, "Nothing really." They're like, "Well, you're gonna have to have something new and big." I was like, "Oh, look, I don't have a foam bit. I haven't learned any. I'm just gonna be doing what." In fact, I need to make a declaration. I've got nothing new. I've got no foam, and it was kind of the joke, like, you should put that on your helmet. My friend made a sticker, and I kind of knew what I was doing. It was like a declaration that, like, I don't have it, and I not that I'm against it, but I knew it was a contentious point, and it was kind of pushing people's buttons a little bit. And so I've been guilty of it, and I'm sorry to those people, you know, but it's just, that's just me and my character, I guess. I was just being mischievous, and some people saw the funny side, and some people took it really personally and were probably still offended by it to this day.
You gotta push some buttons to get somewhere.
Yeah. And just, so no, just really everything about riding has been, it's been so good, and I will leave riding with the precious thing that I began with, which is just the spirit of how great it is to ride a bike and do fun things with friends and all of that. And that's the one thing I would just say to everybody: hold on to that spirit. It's the only thing that's really important. I don't care how many likes you get on your Instagram or whether you're sponsored or whether you're good or not. Just do your thing and enjoy every minute of it. Yeah, because the bike is just that. It's the tool for the adventure. It's the vehicle for an exception, like an incredible life, a journey and adventure, and that's what's important. Yeah, definitely. All right, well, cool. All right, well, I think we're good. Thanks for doing this, Chad.